Hey everybody, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. I am Derek, or Derek Thord, as I will be known in this book, and alongside me I have my best friend.
Oh my god, I don't know what to say. Shit, I'm so used to like the introduction that it's just flowing. Hi everyone, sorry for that mumbling, stumbling start. This is, what is it? Jarza Orlong, or aka Justin, joining alongside my best friend here. So
way to make that not sound awkward at all.
Yeah, this is what I do. I'm not used to like following up, because when you did it with the first episode, you didn't even introduce me. You just went right to our guests.
I thought I had you in there. Maybe I didn't. So,
it was like really quick, so like I didn't really get any repetition there. So
and I mean, things have been a little wonky because these chapters have been huge, so it's taking us a little more time, and holidays and stuff. So
it's that time of year.
It's that time of year. Yeah, we haven't been able to be doing this every week. So here we are. Chapter 3, House of Chains. Man, what a chapter! This one, I've listened to, and I guess I don't remember if Mr. Erickson talked about it with us, but on other episodes, I've listened to like one or two that he's done with 10 Very Big Books, like when they finished up a book. And he always talked about how he's just like, a short story writer.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that felt super evident in this chapter because it was such a good chapter. I really loved this chapter. This is my favorite one so far. Might be one of my favorite chapters that we've read, period, out of these 4 books. But it was just like, it felt like it could be a self-contained short story to me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you. I definitely think that this is one of my favorite chapters, alongside of a chapter that happens in Deadhouse Gates, which kind of correlates to what we'll reveal. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, how you been, man? It's been a little bit since we've had a chance to sit down and talk.
I've been okay. I mean, things are just progressing towards the holidays. Winter break's coming up, so I'm looking forward to a little bit of rest and relaxation, as I will just not work and enjoy some time off.
Nice.
You?
Been busy. I've got my hockey season going, and we've had a pretty good stretch of home games for the college team here, so I've been going to those. The only games I've missed this year were an away series when we were up in Bemidji, and I was down in North Carolina helping my sister move, so I probably, even if I was home, I probably wouldn't have gone to Bemidji because it's like a 5-6 hour drive.
Sure.
But otherwise, a lot of hockey, just busy work and stuff around the house, just the everyday stuff.
Yeah, totally understandable.
Trying to read when I can. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not getting too much of it in lately, but I'm sure that'll wind down as the new year comes in.
Right. So I guess, Okay, so it's December 10th today. We're recording this chapter. Saturday, whatever day that is, we'll record chapter 4 with the Nostalgic Dragon from YouTube. So that'll be cool. And then that will probably be it for this year, I would think.
Yeah.
Because we'll have Christmas. I'll be out of town just before Christmas, and then we'll have Christmas, and then it's New Year's. So yeah, just be patient. This obviously will come out after all that stuff. So
yeah, right. Yeah, or around that time, actually.
I guess I don't know what you have going on, but I mean, Christmas and New Year's and stuff, I wouldn't expect you to be slaving away.
No. But like I said, I'll be taking some time off. So I would imagine that I will have read chapter 5 and I will have summarized at least some of it. And I would imagine editing this episode. I mean, this is the next one to go out. So I have no more in the bank.
We'll have to work that back up here.
Yeah. So new episode releases tonight at midnight. Chapter 2 will be available. I mean, it doesn't matter because no one's going to hear this for a week or two. But as current events happen,
Yeah, it's just kind of fun to give that timeline to people. They're like, okay, we're listening to this on whatever day it is, and they said on this date they're recording it, and blah 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 blah. So
right,
that's kind of the chaotic life we live with everything we both have going on.
Yeah, for sure. But hey, what do you say? Should we move on to our patrons here?
Yeah, we should do that.
All right, we got a new one here, so we should celebrate with some high fives and some streamers or something. I don't have any of that. And we can't high five because we're an hour and a half away. But air five. We've got Jan the Picker, Luciana Etrigan, Ryan the Topological, Damien the Rock of Faces, Nate Fiddle Me This, Shield Anvil Dylan, Calvin He Who Witnessed, Livia the Malazan Potato, Aaron Mott Irregular, Scott the Only, Graceless Passion, Dead Smell, and joining us is Gestriant. So we have our Destriant, we have our Shield Anvil, we just need a Mortal Sword.
And we'll have the trifecta.
Yeah, we have the the trifecta and our chain of dogs. Two things that shouldn't be together.
Well, hopefully our little chain of dogs will be better protected then.
Yeah, so.
All right, I'll take the epigraph here, and then you can roll into your first section.
Sounds great.
Among the found families of Darujistan, there is Nam. The noble houses of Darujistan, Mizdri.
I was confused at that, but apparently that's the author.
Oh.
I don't know who that is, but I feel like that's the first time we've heard of them.
I think so.
All right, first section here in House of Chains, chapter 3. Torvald told Karza that he missed him as the Urid warrior was being loaded into the wagon. As Karza was set down, he spotted Silgar, Damisk, and 3 other Nathi lowlanders in a wagon nearby. He laughed and called out, "Taker of slaves!" Shard, a Malazan soldier, climbed onto the wagon's wall and looked in on Karza. He quickly calls out for the mage Ebron to come take a look, as the net around Karza seems to be weakening. Ebron climbed up beside Shard and told him to quickly go get some chains and some heavy ones too, and also inform the captain as well. Shard dropped down out of sight. The mage scowled down at the Urid warrior and stated that Karza must have Otateril in his veins, as the net around him should have either killed him or the pain should have driven the warrior mad. Soldiers were suddenly climbing up the sides, some with crossbows, others with chains. Karza tested the magical restraints and found himself able to snap the strands. There was wild shouts and panic as the Urid warrior began dragging himself free and grabbing his blood sword. Something cracked him upside the head and blackness swept over him. He woke up and he was chained, spread-eagled to the bed of the wagon. Torvald spoke from somewhere beyond his head. Torvald admits that he thought the Urid warrior was dead, as it's been 6 days of travel. All Karza could say was that Torvald spoke too many words. Nam continues on talking, explaining that they were now Malazan prisoners, and that was much better than being Silgar's slaves. They were likely headed for the Imperial mines in 7 cities. Karza makes a humorous jab at Torvald, and they converse a bit more, before Nam brings up that they'll be reaching Culvern Crossing by the night. Torvald keeps on talking, touching on topics such as Karza's skin, and how Ebron the mage thinks that Karza does not have normal flesh, which means that Karza has purer blood, to a story about a bear in a cage in his hometown of Darujistan, as well as how Karza will be loaded onto the ships. After some time of talking, Torvald asks if Karza was still with him. Karza did not reply, but in his mind he thought, "Lead me, war leader." This encounter was not what he had expected. The Lowlanders were both weak and strong. When they reached the Silver Lake, they had expected a farmstead, not a whole-ass town. The most horrifying discovery, though, was that of the Sunid slaves. He tells himself that he will snap the chains of the Sunid and deliver vengeance with his blood sword on these lowlanders. He wondered about the Malazans, as they were different from the Nathi, conquerors from a distant land, holders of strict laws. Their captives were not slaves, but prisoners, though he didn't see much difference, as he would be put to work regardless. He didn't want to work, so therefore it was a punishment, intended to break his warrior's spirit. He tells himself that this shall not happen. He is Urid, not Sunid. They would have to kill him. He was puzzled by this and thinks to himself that if he continues with that thought, though, he would never see release from this wagon. He is reminded of Nam telling him to be patient. He asks Uragul's forgiveness, as he must be patient, and seemed to have given up his warrior's nature. Even as he thought about it, though, he knew it wouldn't work, as these Malazans were clever. He needed to fashion a different type of illusion. He is reminded about Delim Thord after the ordeal with Calm. He decides that he will not show a broken spirit, but rather that of a broken mind. The Teblor had lived in blindness for centuries, oblivious to the growing threat of the lowlanders. Borders that were once defended had been left abandoned, left open to the poisoning influences from the south. It was important to Karza to find out the reasons for this failing. The Sunid had never been the strongest, but they were Teblor nonetheless, and what befell them could befall the other tribes. This was a difficult pill to swallow, but must be faced. Polk had been something far less than the warrior of glorious deeds that he made himself out to be. If Karza's grandfather had returned to the tribe with warnings of the truth, then maybe the slow invasion, a war on the Teblor, would have been enough to unite the tribes. This thought deeply troubled him. His grandfather's failing had been a deeper one. It wasn't the lies, but the lack of courage, as he was unable to wrestle himself free from the binds and the rules of the Teblor's conduct, its innate conservatism, and on top of that, the isolation. A thought about how this father's courage was defeated, though. His thoughts recall him to some of his father's actions, and at the time, Karza thought that they were cowardice. However, he tells his father, in his mind, that he had delivered words upon his son, and he's had enough wounds. Uragul and the Seven were suddenly with him. Their power would make him impenetrable to all that assailed his spirit. He would one day return to his people and shatter their tribes, or shatter their rules. He would unite the Teblor, and they would march behind him, down into the lowlands. Everything he endured, currently and previously, was nothing but a preparation for him. These were his last thoughts before he was unconscious once more. Such an interesting way to bring this out. I mean, like at the end of chapter 2, I had a feeling that, he was going to, in some way, shape, or form, break free. And I mean, he did, but then was captured again right after that. So it's really interesting just to see how this starts.
Well, what do you got here for thoughts?
So when the mage Ebron is kind of wondering how Karza is able to defeat this net, the sorceress net that takes down Denrabi in oceans, right? And I have a feeling that is likely a possibility. He has some type, I don't know if it would be Otaterol, but some type of, well, I guess that is the only element in this world so far that can repel sorcery that we know of, right?
Yeah, unless he's got some sort of like other magical ability that we don't know of yet.
Yeah. I forget which book it was, but I feel like we got an explanation as to how Otaterol was created. Something to do with the First Empire, right?
I think it was in Dead House Gates.
I think it was in Memories of Ice during the chapter with Treach, as he's like killed by the Kel Hunters, and Kalava comes up and talks to him, and they talk about the First Empire briefly.
I must be remembering something different from Dead House then. I don't really remember, but they kind of talk about how they like find it and stuff or something.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to research that up a bit, or I'll just wait until I do my reread. But or more will be explained as we go on. But yeah, I would imagine that the Teblor have some type of ototeral properties, either in their veins or on their skin.
Well, you know what? I'm kind of wondering, do they all have this ability, or is it just Karsa?
Well, later on, which I do make a point, during, again, Torvald Nam's very long rants, various conversation topics, he does talk about Karsa and the Urid having purer blood. So here's the note that I had about the purer blood conversation as Torvald Nam is talking at Karsa about Ebron's statement. Just after editing episode 1, it almost seems to me that the Urid are probably the most secluded, which makes sense as to why they have stuck to their ways a little bit more, as Karsa says, with like conservatism and isolation didn't help that, as they haven't had any intrusions from the outside world, right? Whereas the surrounding clans have had some poisonous influence, as Karsa states here at the end. And this pure blood comment just seems to fit with this thought. So they're the closest to what the Teblor used to be, is kind of my interpretation of this sorceress repelling skin.
All right. Well, I think it's something we'll have to wait and see. I mean, as far as we know, he's been the only, he was the only one that was ever attacked with magic, because he was kind of the, he's the war leader. He's the one out there causing the most havoc. So they kind of focused on him most.
Right.
I would think. I mean, that was my take.
Well, here's my question, and this will probably get brought up later because it kind of ties into a later section in this chapter. But is it possible that the Talani Mass or the Jaghut, or however the Teblar are involved with the Spirit Wars, right? Is it possible that it's because of these properties of their skin? Were they used to be a way of deflecting sorcery?
I don't know.
It's just a thought that I had. Oh, that actually was my next. So the one after that is how the conversation about how Karsa will be loaded onto the ships, and Nam kind of explains to him that the wheels will be taken off the wagon and he'll just be loaded, chained to the bed. And it's just, wow, brutal. Chained to a bed of a wagon. Like, you don't even get a small reprieve from the wagon.
Yeah.
That
would suck.
And then kind of when Karsa, after Nam's very long conversation with himself / Karsa listening, he thinks about Delum Thord. And I feel like the thought of how Delum Thord essentially broke his mind, right? This is a way of honoring Delum, and almost really kind of a step in the right direction, in the direction that I thought Karsa would go. 2 chapters ago, he wouldn't have had the mind or clarity to like subdue his warrior's spirit. Like, he's contemplating. The thought of what happened to Delum Thord is essentially his way of trying to convince his captors that he's not dangerous anymore. And I thought that was funny for him to even think and debate. And as we find out, go with it, right? Like, he decides that like he needs to give this illusion that he's lost his mind so that he can potentially be unchained, and listen to Nam's advice and just be patient.
Yeah, but I wonder, I mean, it starts off that way, but then I kind of wonder like how much of it is a game, I think he's kind of teetering on that edge of it being for real.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't know, I guess that part is, neither here nor there for me. It's more just kind of the thought about Delum Thord's fate that really struck with me, because Delum unintentionally kind of taught him a lesson.
Sure.
So the probably the best part in this whole first section to me is just his internal monologue about how his grandfather had failed, right? And you know what? It's potential that his dad was actually right. But that didn't mean that it didn't come along with its own set of wounds in that kind of relationship. And I just loved all of that. It was just so great. And I almost I feel like I called it a little bit. I feel like this is what, if Karsa is having these thoughts, then this is kind of a progression into the direction that I thought he would go to in the last chapter. because he's kind of he's subtly denouncing his grandfather, right? Courage, a warrior's trait, not necessarily in battle, but mind and wits. And Karsa kind of figured that out, that like it doesn't, you don't have to have courage just in a physical sense, but the courage to like, hey, there's probably some potential issues here. But Polk was so headstrong into like holding up those Templar values, and look what happened. Look what Karsa potentially stumbled upon.
Yeah, I think Karsa, I mean, he's realizing this stuff and just becoming more rounded as an individual instead of just, I mean, not like we're that far in the book, we're only a couple chapters, but we've covered a pretty good chunk of pages. But early on, in the first few pages, it's just kind of like, if there's a problem, I'm just going to kill it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. These are not thoughts that Karsa from chapter 1 and chapter 2 would be having.
Right.
I almost want to say it happened too fast, but that's like 1% of me. I feel like the pacing was right there because, again, we have read almost 25% of the book already just with these 3 chapters. So,
which is freaking wild.
Right. Yeah, it's absolutely wild. So, like, don't look at it in chapters, look at it in number of pages. It makes sense for him to be having these types of doubts. And it's funny because Bayroth prayed that he would be visited with doubts. And here they are.
It was just a matter of time.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I really had. I feel like this chapter can almost be broken up into 2 sections or 2 halves. Even though they're not quite half.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
All right, well, you ready for my first section here?
Let's do it.
Voices that were excited awoke Karsa. It was near dark, the wagon wasn't moving, and he could smell food. Torvald noticed he was awake and said it was Culverin Crossing, and the town was buzzing. The Malazan soldiers were excited. Apparently, Pale had fallen. Moonspawn was retreating to Darujistan from the sounds of it. It was a big battle with lots of sorcery. He figured the company here wanted to be there for the battle, and he thought they were idiots, but that's a soldier for you. Shard said why wouldn't they want to be there? The Ashok regiment deserved better than hunting bandits and slavers. Torvald asked why they weren't down south. Shard said it was because she didn't trust them. They're from the 7 cities, and she don't trust them. Torvald interrupted him and assumed that he meant the Empress, and if she didn't trust them, why would she send them home? Isn't their home about to be in a rebellion where they could turn their backs? Wouldn't it make more sense to have them on Genebacchus? Shard said he didn't know why he was talking to him, or Torvald. He could be a claw undercover. Torvald said if he was in fact a claw, that he hadn't been treated very well, a detail that he would note in his report to the Empress. Oh, and didn't Shard also call the Empress a bitch? Noted as well. Karsa began a conversation with Torvald, telling him of his friend Dellum Thord and what had happened to his head. The same thing had happened to Karsa, wink wink. Torvald said he would play along as when Karsa escaped, he would take him with. Karsa said he gave his word and would take him. Torvald said he liked how formal Karsa was about it. It sounded real. Karsa said it was real and not to mock him. Otherwise, he would kill him when he freed him. Torvald said he would need another vow out of him in that case. Karsa said he would not kill him, once freed, unless given cause. Torvald wanted to know what would give Karsa cause to kill him. Karsa grew annoyed and asked if his kind were all like him. Torvald said it didn't need to be a big list. Attempted murder, betrayal, mockery. Anything beyond those? Karsa said talking too much. Torvald said that was getting into a pretty subjective area. Karsa said he would conquer Darujistan first. Torvald said he thought the Malazans would get there first, and his beloved city had never been conquered before. Sergeant Cord came back and said Torvald sure didn't look like a claw, but maybe that was the point. He asked if Karsa had woken up yet. Torvald said twice, but he'd only drooled all over himself. If he had a brain, it was probably broken after taking that shot that knocked him out. Cord said that might be for the best, so long as he doesn't die. And they would treat him, or Torvald, as everyone else, unless he came clean and said he was a claw. So he was still headed to the Otadral mines. Torvald said that was fine. That might just be part of his plan all along. Cord said to get the wagon onto the ferry and walked away. Karsa said he was playing a dangerous game. Torvald said he may not be playing the game he thinks. Karsa told him being whatever the fuck a claw was would be a reason to kill him. So he would have to suffer this curse of Torvald talking too much. Torvald agreed to this. I really like, I don't know if Karsa's like trying to be funny, but he kind of is. I appreciate that, I take it as humor, but, he's like, I really like where Torvald just keeps talking, just keeps yapping, and Karsa's like, I think I'm going to conquer Darujistan first.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just funny.
Yeah, or that part about cutting out his tongue as a potential punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it's a feeble attempt at humor. Karsa is not taking anything that Nam is saying seriously, as far as like when Nam is not being serious. But at the same time, Karsa, like I said, feebly catching on and attempting to dish it back.
I think Karsa is just, he's kind of the living embodiment of his weapon, though, right? Like we kind of got one purpose, and that's to kill shit. So he's just straightforward and to the point. So even like I find this, a touch funny, but I don't always think that he necessarily means it to be that way. But yeah, that was kind of my one thought on this section is I loved this whole section, even though he's captured and he's kind of being, well, I guess this is more for Torvald. He's still being a smart ass and just kind of having fun. He's like, oh, well, if I am a claw, I'm making my little report here, and it's not going to look so good when it gets back to the Empress for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely some nice reprieve compared to what happens after, because it's not as humorous. So it's kind of like Erickson saying, like, hey, here's a little bit of fun before we get into the serious shit.
Right.
So yeah, it's cool. And going on your like Bloodsword comment, you're absolutely right. And it's just funny because everything that we've talked about as far as like Karsa's humor and Torvald and the way that they interact with each other, it's making him start to be multidimensional, so not as straightforward. Sure. Yeah, which is cool to see. And I'm been secretly hoping that was his path.
Yeah, if he was just one dimensional and just like kill, and that's all we ever got out of him, I don't know. It probably wouldn't be that interesting, I think. So, yeah. And I would imagine we're going to get a lot more out of him than that, from Mr. Erickson.
Oh, for sure. All right, sir. Well, it was a shorter section, but, and again, transitional. We're kind of hopping from place to place on our journey from Silver Lake to our destination.
Right. Yeah, we can keep going here.
All right. To Karsa's surprise, maintaining the illusion of insanity was keeping him sane. Days turned into weeks, chained down to the bed of the wagon. At the end of each day, he was washed down with buckets of ice-cold water and was fed by the drover guiding the wagon. He would use a large wooden spoon to pour a scalding concoction into Karsa's mouth. The feedings happened too often for the Urid's mouth to heal properly. This was alleviated when Torvald offered to feed the Templar, ensuring the food had cooled properly before feeding. The Templar kept his muscles fit through flexing and unflexing, but his joints ached from not moving. This he could do absolutely nothing about. At times, his discipline faltered, his thoughts going back to the demon they had released, and how it too had spent an extraordinary amount of time pinned beneath a rock. Thoughts of her left him humbled, his spirit weakened by his growing frailty. Torvald took to talking to him, offering words of assurance and empathy. Even though he talked too much, the words fed the Urid warrior, keeping his spirit from starving. They measured the cycle of days and nights. He taught him the Malazan language and gave him accounts of the places they traveled to. Nearly a month later, Karsa found himself staring up at a gate passing over him. The port city of Tanis, on the edge of the Malazan Sea. The Malazan Sea was no tiny pond, however. It would take 4 days and 3 nights to arrive at the city of Maltias. Being transferred to the ship allowed Karza to be set upright, creating a new type of torture as the chains took on his full weight. He screamed in pain until someone had poured a burning liquid down his throat, and his mind sank away. When he awoke, he found that he was still upright, strapped to what Torvald had called the main mast. The Jeru was chained nearby, assuming the care of Karza. The ship's healer had spread a salve on Karza's joints, deadening the pain. However, a new pain behind his eyes arrived. Torvald explained that they had poured a whole bladder of rum down his throat. Torvald gives Karza an update on the events that occurred. Captain Kindly and his soldiers have parted ways. He tells the Urid that he has been raving in his sleep about some Dalis and the horrible list of things he had planned for whoever she was. He asked Karza if he was hungry. The crew had avoided Karza as much as possible, and the other prisoners were locked below. The wagon bed Karza was chained to had proved to be too big to fit into the cellar hold. Kindly had ordered that Karza is not to be released, despite the Urid's lack of sanity. The illusion seemed to have worked. The Jeru finally muttered that eventually they'll have to unchain the Teblor, but not until they arrive at the mines. He tells Karza to keep holding on, assuming that Karza was still pretending as he had. Torvald convinced he was insane. Torvald seeks assurance and asks the Urid if he is actually still sane. Karza grunted softly, even though he himself was unsure. Some days had been lost entirely. He didn't know if he could hold on. It was midday when the ship reached Malazan, the city that appeared to be separate cities in one. His view was unobstructed as he could see 3 different styles of a fortification, commanding 3 distinct rises in the land. Karza concluded that 3 tribes had settled here. Torvald rose in a rattling of chains. Stretching, he tells Karza that the city inhabitants were Nathi, Genabari, and Korhivi, and what keeps them from each other's throats was a Malazan overlord and 3 companies of the Ashtok regiment. Torvald explains the tower that looks half ruined was from a war between the Nathi and the Korhivi. The whole Nathi fleet filled the bay, too busy trying to kill each other to notice when the Malazan forces arrived. Dujek, bridge burners, and legions of the Second, and 2 mages were able to defeat the Nathi fleet by the end of the day. The Genabari royal line holed up in the Red Castle were all dead. The Korhivi surrendered. As the ship was approaching the dock, Torvald continued to ramble on, when the first mate interrupts and asks Torvald why he's explaining politics to a brainless fool. Torvald more or less agrees, and then asks the first mate how long they'd be here. The first mate explains the course of events for the next few days. They pick up some soldiers and sail to Genabaris, where they will be shipped off, and he'll, the first mate, be done with them. Torvald senses some unease and calls out the first mate on this observation. The man explains that there are Crimson Guard in Malazan, stirring up the Korhivi. The situation in the city is about to get unsettling. Torvald tells the man that the Empress would be negligent to discount the opinions of her officers. The first mate's eyes narrowed and said that she would at that. He then strode ahead, barking out orders to a group of sailors who'd run out of things to do. Torvald looked over at Karza and said that the Crimson Guard was indeed troubling, but only for the Malazans, and then he winked. So,
what do you think?
I think that I can't imagine what Karza is going through. To be going through so much pain and torture. I mean, can't even eat because the person feeding him doesn't care whether it's too hot or not. You know, he's in a new position. He's not laying down. You know, he's like upright. All of his weight is, doing what they're doing. So, yeah, so bad that they've got to get him drunk in order for him to shut up because the pain is just so unbearable. It's such a contrast from the previous 2 chapters that it's kind of almost symbolic to his character, right? Because in the previous 2 chapters, he's got this like confidence. He's got this air of ignorance. Like, I can do anything that I want to. And now he can't.
Yeah, he can't do anything. He can't even feed himself. Like the most basic thing you could do, he can't even do it.
Right. So I just thought that was some unique symbolism there. And maybe not even symbolism, but just, a very kind of opposite type of situation.
Sure.
Another thing that I loved is the parallel here between Karza and the torturous sail, calm, trapped underneath the rock, and how the thoughts of her had left him humbled. I loved that parallel there, because obviously she was there much longer than Karza would end up to be. But I mean, he doesn't really know that. He doesn't know when he's being released at this moment in time. But I liked that parallel, that he compares himself to the torturous sail. So I don't know if there's like a deeper meaning there, if there's potentially a relationship between the Teblor and the torturous sail. I don't know if that's necessarily what he's saying. It might be, it might not be, but just something I have thought about.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there'll be. I guess I don't think there's going to be much there.
No, I guess probably not. If it is true, then that might just be one of the the clues that we ended up picking out. So the other thought that I had was just Karza's observation of 3 distinct like cultures. Kind of what we got a little bit with Capistan is just everything was founded by 2 different tribes, and like one section of Capistan was different from the other. There was like the Daru district, and then something else that I can't remember.
So, like the plains people that had like settled or whatever, and like didn't have any rhyme or reason to anything.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but something along those lines.
Yeah. So I think it's funny that he's describing these 3 styles of architecture. One was said to be squat, one was older and decrepit, but had been painted in a faded red wash, and then the other pocked and battle scarred. And Torvald explains these fortifications a bit later, but it's really interesting to kind of hear the history of a place we haven't even really seen yet. And I would imagine that we probably have already had instances. They do talk about Dujek, the bridge burners, and legions of the second kind of coming out here and defeating the Nathi fleet. And I could have swore that in one of the previous books we heard very briefly like a conversation between bridge burners about this particular happening, but I obviously can't recall. But I mean, it's just one of those things where I'm pointing it out, not because like there's a huge significance or anything, but more so that what Karza is going through, not a situation, but the actual city itself. Dujek and the bridge burners, Whiskey Jack and Mallet and Blend and Picker and all those guys were here, right? They were here. So it's just kind of cool to, have that as a pin in your mind.
Yeah, I agree.
When they're talking when Torvald is talking more or less to the first mate, and it's this part where he tells the first mate that the Empress would be negligent to discount the opinions of her officers. And just this line where the first mate's eyes narrowed. And I just chuckled at this from Torvald Nam, because he's played this game of maybe he's a claw and maybe he isn't claw. And so nobody really knows how to take him seriously or if they should take him seriously. And I can see that expression in my mind as I was reading that. So I guess just a little bit more of some humor sprinkled in with a lot of the things that Karza is going through physically and mentally.
I do like that he's just kind of going with the flow on it. He's like, I mean, I'm thinking he's probably not a claw, but I think it's fun that he's just taking the part for now.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely some comic relief, and in a good way.
Definitely.
The last thing I got for this is the whole Crimson Guard being in the city. I wonder if this is where they went either during Gardens of the Moon or potentially their removal from Brood's forces in Memories of Ice because they had to attend to internal matters. So I wonder if this is what happens. Is this maybe what we see in Return of the Crimson Guard by Ian Esselmont? Is it maybe what happens?
That's not the first one we'll read when we get to Esselmont's books, is it?
No, that's the second one.
Okay. I thought Night of Knives was first, but it wasn't.
Yeah. But I think there's a book between Night of Knives from Books of the Fallen and then Crimson Guard. I'd have to look. So there'll be a moment in time where we'll read Esselmont, Erickson, and then Esselmont, and then Erickson again. So that'll be fun. I'm excited to get to those.
I'm always excited just to get to the next chapter.
I guess that's a short-term win. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's just these, and this is why I said earlier that, there's definitely a first half and then there's a last half. Everything that is kind of culminating to what is the halfway point is really just travel from here to there and things that happen during this travel. So I don't have much else to say, as those were my main points that I picked out.
They were good ones. All right. Well, I got another short section here. Days had passed before Karsa's eyes. He had become aware again as his wagon bed pitched all over below him. He was being pulled through the air, chains pulling tight. The sailors pulled him higher, and the figures grew smaller below him. Finally, Karsa was put into place. The sailors backed away from him, and all Karsa could do was smile. Torvald said it might be a nasty smile, but it was harmless, unless they were superstitious. Before Torvald could finish his sentence, he was punched in the nose, blood everywhere. Laying on the ground, he showed no sign of getting up. The large man standing over Torvald said if he kept talking, he would cut out his tongue and nail it to the mast. And if his giant of a friend caused any trouble, he would chain him up next to Karsa and toss them both overboard. Told Torvald to nod if he understood. Torvald got the message. The blue-skinned man told Karsa to wipe the shit-eating grin off of his face, otherwise he would cut his lips off. He didn't need them to eat, and the other miners wouldn't care. Karsa continued to smile all the same. Torvald pleaded with the man, saying his head was rattled. The blue-skinned man called for Bosun and told him to gag Karsa. Torvald called them idiots and said not to suffocate him. They loosened the knots and pulled the cloth down under his nose so Karsa could breathe. The blue man then asked what the hell they were all standing around for. Torvald apologized to Karsa and said he would get the cloth off of him. It might take him some time, but to trust him. And for the love of God, please don't be smiling when he removed it. Karsa, this is kind of where I wonder, does he really understand what's going on? Or is he just so... Could you imagine being, you're not fed well, you're not hydrated, and then somebody pours a bunch of rum down your mouth and you puke it up. And so you probably have the world's worst hangover on top of being essentially concussed. So yeah, I don't really know. I wonder how much he's really with it at the moment. So this smile that he has, I can just imagine him. It's just got to be this murderous, nasty smile.
Yeah. Or, playing to the grip of insanity, right? I mean, maybe he does understand everything. Maybe this is just one way to convince people that he is insane or that he's lost his mind, right?
I think that line right now is really thin and he's straddling it. I mean, maybe he's over it a little bit. I don't know, but he's not completely gone.
Well, I mean, Torvald throughout these chapters, and we don't talk about it, but he really sells it for Karsa. Maybe that's my segue into talking about how Torvald is kind of supporting Karsa. And if Torvald wasn't there, I don't know if Karsa actually would be sane or even alive.
Right. But and I'm sure I don't think I mentioned it in any of my talking points throughout this chapter, but there's times where Torvald isn't even sure if he's sane or not.
Right. Yeah, for sure. There's definitely going to be some cut corners in some of the summaries that we make because it was a long chapter, y'all.
Yeah, this one was 70 pages. I only had one more thought here, but just, Torvald calling these guys idiots and saying not to suffocate them. I feel like he's kind of playing with fire here a little bit to be calling them idiots when they're just threatening to cut out your tongue and cut off your lips and, cause bodily harm to you. Yeah, I think you kind of got to be careful in that moment, and he's just going for it.
Yeah, I thought the same thing at first, but it's actually the captain who's calling his crew idiots because they're gagging him too hard.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So I just misinterpreted them.
I thought so at first. So, I mean, it is really, really subtle. But, like, if you read that piece again, it says, like, something, captain, something, you're idiots, Yeah.
Gotcha. This one I remember having a hard time with this little section. Just some of the, like, with Karsa getting raised up and stuff, I had, like, a hard time with that. It was kind of a little confusing to read and then try to, like, I don't want to, like, this isn't really the term I want to use, but to, like, dumb it down, essentially, to type it out, paraphrase it, I guess, would maybe be a better way to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of our summaries as paraphrasing, but, there's that added modernization. Like, in a sense, you're right, it is dumbing down and not to say that how we're summarizing is meant for dumb people or, in order for us to understand it. It's really just to try to give, like, modern language to it, if that makes any fucking sense. I guess that's how I think about it, is just like, how I would have a conversation about these events, Yeah. So that people could understand what it is I'm trying to describe and the beauty of these books.
That was all I had here for that section. That was a shorter one here, but if you're ready, I think we could probably go on to your next one here.
Awesome. Yeah. Karsa's mind had fled its mortal prison, one presence and then six, barely visible through a swirling haze. One spoke, asking Karsa why he had come to them. Karsa responded that he was before them, but left him confused. Urigal said that he was not. Rather, it was his mind. Karsa said that he had failed them. Urigal agrees, and because Karsa has abandoned them, they must do the same. They must seek another. Urigal tells Karsa that their faith in him was misplaced. The haze thickened, and he found himself atop a hill. Chains stretched out from his wrists to all sides. On the other end of the chains, he could feel movement, but because of the haze, had not yet revealed what. Looking down, Karsa saw bone at his feet, Teblor and Lowlander. The entire hill was nothing but bones. The chains at his wrists slackened suddenly, and then movement in the mists, drawing closer. Karsa was terrified. Headless corpses sauntered into view. The chain that tethered them together penetrated the corpse's chest. Their withered hands reaching out to him, making their way up the slope. Karsa wanted to flee, but he was surrounded. The bones at his feet held his ankles in place. A hiss, a susurration through rotting throats, told Karsa to lead them. Lead them, war leader. Karsa shrieked. A hand closed about his ankle. Karsa's head snapped back, and he smacked it on the bed of the wagon. He gulped for air, but it slid down his throat like sand, choking him. He opened his eyes and saw that various figures were staring at him, while the ship rocked upon the sea. He realized that he had been screaming, enough to make his muscles spasm, clenching tight to cut off his flow of air. He was dying. A voice deep in his mind said that perhaps they would not abandon him, unless, of course, Karsa wished to meet his dead once more. They told him to breathe. Through watery eyes, Karsa saw Nam climbing his chains to remove the gag. Nam was shouting words at the frozen Malazans. It was then that Karsa noticed the sky beyond the ship's prow. Colors and churning clouds, swirls bleeding from what appeared to be open wounds. The storm commanded the entire sky. That was when he saw the chains, snapping down on the horizon. Hundreds of them, huge, black, whipping the air with explosions of red dust, crisscrossing the sky. The storm was headed their direction. Torvald attempted to give Karsa some water, but it hurt too much to swallow. Nam explains to Karza that everything was fine until the storm arrived, and it had been weeks that Karza had been out. Nam goes on to tell Karza that the sailors think that the Urid warrior brought on the storm, as the storm hadn't arrived until Karza started screaming. Nam is frantic at this point and tells Karza that they'll do anything, even release him. Torvald says to Karza to just send this unholy storm away. Karza could see that the chains were striking the water in front of the boat, sending water over the sides. Karza watched as the blue-skinned captain came down the stairs, claiming this was no Mael-blessed squall. He pointed a finger at Karza and said that he's running out of time, and if he sends the storm away, they can negotiate. Torvald said that they aren't even sure if Karza is responsible. The captain wanted to test this, and ordered some sailors to restrain Nam and gather Karza to throw him and his stuff overboard. Torvald screamed for the captain to wait, and begged that they release Karza from his chains. The captain denied this. Chains in the sky were ripping and tearing apart the sea, sending spray and water everywhere, making components of the ship tremble with each strike. Karza stared up at the sky as he was dragged along a ramp of rollers to the edge of the ship. Torvald pleaded with Karza to end his mind games and send the storm away. Karza tried to say 2 words, but nobody could understand. The captain asked what it was that he was saying. Torvald responded and said that he didn't know, but encouraged Karza to keep trying. Karza did, repeating the same 2 words over and over and over again. As the sailors pulled that wagon bed onto the railing, the bed was half over the railing and half over the sea. Still repeating the same 2 words, he watched as the last patch of clear sky slid away, a sudden plunge into darkness, and Karza knew it was too late. Even as his words finally came out, "Go away!" From overhead, chains snapped down, plunging directly, it seemed, to Karza's chest. A flash, a detonation, sounds of the ship snapping, crackling, and popping. The entire ship was falling away from him. The entire platform trembled on its fall to the water. Karza caught a glimpse of the ship. The deck was torn open, the 3 masts were gone, and sailors were sprawled and twisted among the wreckage. He was then staring at the sky, a massive wound overhead, a fierce impact, and then darkness. His eyes opened, he could hear waves lapping up against his platform, the platform creaking and rocking from someone else's movement. Torvald Nam crawled into view, and after some brief conversation on their reunion, Nam explains that they have 3 barrels of fresh water and a bundle of something that might be food. Karza asked where they were. Nam responded and told Karza that it was clear to him that the Urid warrior called the storm. The Teblar said that it was not he who brought on the storm. Nam explains that those chains of lightning, not one missed its target. Not a single Malazan was left standing. He explains how he was able to get free and how he witnessed Silgar and 3 men escape in a surviving dory. Meanwhile, the platform was sinking, and Nam was putting planks of wood underneath to keep the platform above water. Karza tells Nam to break his chains. The Daru said he would try, but it would take some work. Karza asked if there was land about. Torvald explained that he wasn't sure where they were, but wherever it wasn't the Meningale Ocean. Nam goes on to explain to Karza that he overheard Silgar talking about a warren, and we might have entered one. Karza told Nam that he needed food and water. Torvald explains that it didn't seem there were any fish or birds. Water he had, food, well, that may be another story. Nam asked if Karza had called upon his gods or something. Karza told him that he did not. Nam then asked why he had been screaming. Karza explains that it was because of a dream, and asks if there was food. Karza listened as Nam started fumbling around with a wooden box he had pulled onto the makeshift raft. All that was inside was some Moranth munitions, and Nam goes on to explain how they were used. Karza asks for water. Torvald says, okay, and then scrambles around for a ladle he had seen. A moment later, Nam was hovering over the Teblar, and Karsa drank slowly. Once he was done, Nam asked if Karsa had felt better. Karsa replied that he was and asked Nam to free him. Nam said he would, but first he needed to support the raft. Karsa said, very well.
I think this would be, to me, this would be the start of the second half.
Yes, I would 100% agree. So there's quite a few things that I have picked out, I guess, from this section. The first half of the section being Karsa and Torvald and kind of their journey into the storm, the dream, and then the storm being called down. And then the second half of this section, which is just where the fuck are they, you know? So going back to kind of the beginning when the seven faces in the rock are talking to Karsa and how Karsa had abandoned them, so they must abandon them too, which I think is just kind of like a manipulation bullshit thing. I don't think that Karsa, you know what I mean? Like that's just that's a very narcissistic thing, like a projection to say, you know, like you abandoned us, so we abandoned you, when really like you have ulterior motives anyway. But that's not my point. My point is, and I know we texted about this, but I wanted to get this in video format, so to speak. But I'm going to guess, based on this whole they must seek another, that Erickson's sequel, titled The Witness Trilogy, that this sequel is about the Teblar or Karsa, or potentially about Daelus's child. And if it is Daelus's child, I'm going to guess that like he's seeking vengeance on Karsa because of the events that took place since he's left the Urid clan. Yet to be determined, as we kind of barely started this book. But I just thought that was like a brilliant aha moment where I'm like, the Witness Trilogy, that has to be something with the Teblar. So this just made me think of that. Aha.
I don't know that I would have thought of that, but
really?
I guess, yeah.
It feels so obvious now when I think about it.
I don't always, I guess I'm not that like forward thinking. Like,
sure.
You know, I'm just living in the moment, I guess.
That's fair.
But I like it. I think it's a good thought.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, I'm sure we have a ways yet before we actually find out.
We got a little ways.
There's like, what, 24 books total with everything combined?
I don't know, a lot. I thought it was like 26, but yeah, I don't know.
Oh, well, either way, we have 20
plus books. Yeah.
The dream sequence, I think, is intense. And I have a feeling that I imagined that the Seven Faces in the Rock concocted this, but I think that they made a mistake, as this dream has a flare of like premonition inside to me. And is it possible that Karsa raised his ancestral Teblar spirits to take back what the Seven stole? Is kind of what this makes me think about. So like in the moment, Karsa is scared as shit about this, but I think it's a move where the Seven are clearly confident in what they've done, right? They have outcasted or kicked out the Teblar spirits, right? And have manipulated the tribes to do their bidding, right? That's kind of what it seems like. We can agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I think that what the Seven are trying to do is scare the shit out of Karsa. But I think that in their confidence and their arrogance, they kind of unintentionally give him or us, even the reader, a premonition on what could potentially happen. So I think the people at the end of these chains are the Teblar spirits or ancestors, these corpses.
I thought they were the people that Karsa had killed.
Ooh, that could be too, even. That very well could be too. I didn't think of that.
But even like this, I know it's a talking point for me later at some point, but even just listening to you read that back, it still just makes me think of the Warren within Dragnipur. Like, I don't know, it just seems too close, so similar to me. So I'm like, well, this is Karsa eventually going to end up with Dragnipur somehow? Like, I don't know, would that be good or bad if he's got a hold of that sword? Or is what if he ends up in there? But then how would all those other souls be in there? I don't know.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Dragnipur is going to be shattered so that Draconis can get freed. That's kind of my prediction for the sword, but I could be wrong. I think what is funny about this chapter and this section is that these corpses are headless. They're headless. They have no heads, right? But what else happens in this chapter that is also headless?
We get to the Salanda.
Right. So is that potentially, like, again, a little hint of a relation, a comparison? Are they somehow in some strange way related to the Tistandi and the Tistidur? You kind of had a similar thought early on, so maybe this is evidence of your Trolsengar thing.
Yeah. I guess I don't know if I could really flesh that out anymore right now, but it's still a thought floating around.
Yeah. Just, it's funny that they're headless. Or the Tistidur did this to his ancestors, right? I mean, we know they lop heads off, so who knows?
Choppy.
So yeah, it's just, all these things are just, things that I'm going to put a pin in, and I would imagine that these things are related to this book. So I'm excited for those clarifications.
This will be random, but I liked your Rice Krispies reference.
Snap, crackling, and popping.
Yeah, I chuckled.
I saw you chuckle, and then I chuckled.
Yeah. I was wondering if that's what you're picking up on.
Yeah. So the next thing, the chains are snapping down on the horizons, hundreds of them. So at first thought, I thought this was just supposed to be, Karsa's been isolated, right? Like, he doesn't have a whole lot of knowledge of the outside world. So I'm wondering if, like, for whatever reason, this is actually supposed to be a personification of lightning. But after reading, it definitely seems like it's intended to be chains. But I wonder who and what this storm is.
Yeah, I guess I thought it was lightning, and it was just, that was the description, I guess. I don't know. I hadn't thought about it being actually chains, but I did think that was a weird way to describe lightning.
Right.
So maybe you're right. Yeah, I don't know. But I don't know. I don't know who it would be either.
Yeah, I guess I'm unsure. So, I mean, it sounds like, and this is one of my comments, my last one, actually, but it says that, like, Karsa was staring at the sky. I'm assuming that his wagon bed is floating in the water, right? Or had just landed, and he saw a massive wound overhead. So I'm thinking that potentially these wounds are happening because of the crippled god. We found out in memories of Ice that he was making Burn sick. So is this like him simultaneously assailing other realms and worlds?
Maybe.
So yeah, I mean, it's either the crippled god or it's the seven. The seven have done this in an attempt to kill Karsa.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know which is more likely.
Yeah, I guess I'm hoping for an explanation as to how the storm started. But in your mind, they are different. It's a different storm than the one that happened in Deadhouse Gates, right?
Yeah, I didn't. I guess, okay. Yeah, I never had a thought that they were related.
Okay. It's just, again, all of this stuff makes me go back to Deadhouse Gates, and I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page, because if I was wrong, I wanted to know.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page, bud.
Just this part, and maybe this is probably better that it's my last thought, but this part where, like, Karsa is just attempting to say, go away, and he can't. And the way that this read to me, it was just hard. It was impactful just to get this desperation in Karsa, the fear, he can't be feeling anything outside of those things. So I firmly don't believe that he believes he caused the storm, but he knows that the sailors do. And so for him to try to get rid of the storm kind of accentuates his panic that he must be feeling.
I was kind of wondering, if you thought he was telling the storm to go away or just everybody else.
I think he was telling the storm to go away. I think that he was giving in, which, again, Karza from chapter 1 and 2 would not be doing that.
Right. I wasn't really sure which way I was leaning on that, because that was like, man, is he just, maybe he's saying go away because he wants to be chucked overboard and he wants to drown and be put out of his misery, basically. Or, I mean, like you said, is he just trying to convince them that this wasn't me?
Yeah. Those are all the thoughts that I had. Obviously, they're in a warren, which I think will get revealed as to what it is as we go on. So I'm good if you are.
Yeah. Ready to continue on then?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I feel like we're moving along pretty good.
I think that this is the part where we slow down a bit.
I always seem to say that right about when that happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there seemed to be neither day nor night in the strange place Karsa and Torvald found themselves in. The air was damp, cool, still, and oddly thick. The chains holding Karsa were anchored on the underside of the makeshift raft, so Torvald could only try and make the hole bigger and pull them up. But he was weak and had to rest often. When he worked, he was relentless. Despite all the wood Torvald had placed underneath, Karsa was still sinking and knew Torvald wouldn't be able to save him in time. Karsa had never been afraid of death, but now Urigal and the other faces in the rock had abandoned his soul, leaving him to the corpses in his dream. He knew the dream had shown him a fate that was real and inevitable. Who had chained these undead creatures to him? He didn't know where to lead them, so now he would drown in this place, away from his village. He would be forgotten. Karsa yelled for Torvald and said he heard new sounds. Torvald cried out. He saw a dozen or so ships, but they all looked wrecked. It looked like there had been a battle with lots of sorcery here as well. Things shifted and Karsa was able to see the ships and noticed there were two distinct styles. Torvald said they should board a few. They might find useful things on them. Torvald said he could swim over to them, but Karsa heard hesitation in his voice. He asked Torvald what the problem was. Torvald said he didn't have the energy to swim. That and the chains on him. He trailed off. Karsa said so be it. Nothing more could be asked of him. Torvald said he didn't expect compassion out of him. Was it exhaustion that brought it out? There was a splash. Torvald was excited and said now he knew why the ships were tipped on their sides. It was shallow here. He could drag them over to the ships. Torvald also thought the ships must have grounded during the battle, as there were dead bodies all around him. Karsa wanted to see one of the dead bodies. Torvald said later, plus the ones in the water were a little soft. They might find a better specimen on the boat. Torvald got them to a boat and said he was climbing up. There was silence for a while. Eventually, Karsa called out for his traveling companion. Karsa heard no reply and laughed, thinking that if he could stand, this water would be waist deep. Instead, he would drown. Finally, he heard Torvald, who apologized, thinking he had passed out. Karsa asked what he had found. Torvald had nothing really, dried bloodstains. The ship had been stripped. Then he noticed Karsa sinking. Karsa said there was nothing to be done for it. Take his weapons and water and leave him. Torvald wasn't giving up that easily. He showed up with some rope and began to fasten it to the makeshift raft. Karsa asked what he was doing. There was no answer. Finally, Torvald was back and said he had done the best he could. He wouldn't let him drown. He would be back. He was going to explore and vanished. Karsa couldn't do anything but wait. The water was up to his ears, now muffling all other sounds, and he watched the ropes grow tighter. Karsa prayed to Urigal again. The voice he heard back said he saw no Teblor, no warrior wading through his enemies, no piles of the dead. Where are his gifts? Karsa said Urigal was a bloodthirsty god. Urigal said any true Teblor would revel in that thought. Karsa said he used to, but now he had doubts. Karsa was brought back to reality by Torvald calling his name. He said he had found tools and began work on breaking the chains that held Karsa. Once freed from the bindings, Karsa nearly passed out from the pain. The freedom of movement had been given to him. Torvald said he would need to do the impossible. He would need to climb. He was too heavy for Torvald to lug up. Karsa said Torvald spoke too much, but to help him move his limbs. If he passed out, keep working them and do the same to the others. Everything went black for Karsa. When he came back to, all he felt was pain. What he felt had mostly dulled. Karsa whispered, calling on the strength of the Teblor to heal him, give him strength. He had not given up. He had not surrendered. He tried to move. There was pain, but it was bearable. However, when he tried to push himself up, every little movement was torture, but he would not quit. Sweat poured down Karsa, and he struggled on. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he realized he was sitting up. He lifted his arms, looking, and was horrified by how small they were. He looked around at the ships broken by battle. He saw carvings of the people who had fought and thought they looked similar to the Teblor. Karsa noticed movement in the water, a fin that surfaced then vanished again. More appeared and the water swirled. There was life, after all, and they had come to feed. One of the creatures rammed his platform and Karsa nearly lost his balance. A corpse nearby was swallowed whole. Karsa didn't get a good look at the corpse to see if it was similar in size to him, but he knew the fish could have easily taken him. Karsa knew he needed to climb. Torvald was above him on the ship, saying he needed to get out of there. These catfish were bigger than sharks and probably just as nasty. There was one lining up behind him now. Karsa understood and grabbed the nearest rope. At that moment, there was an explosion behind him as a catfish had thrown itself onto the raft in an attempt to get Karsa. Karsa yelled, "Urgal! Witness!" and climbed. Torvald yelled for Karsa to watch his legs. When he looked down, he saw a catfish rising up to swallow him. He pulled himself up in a desperate surge, and the catfish's mouth closed on empty air. Torvald was still yelling wildly when Karsa rose. He saw Torvald had a harpoon that had been stuck into a catfish. The line was running out, and Karsa tied it. They both hoped it would hold, knowing they had the potential for plenty of food. The fish was pulling them right towards another ship. They would crash into it. Torvald yelled to get to the other side. As Karsa struggled to keep up, he asked if Torvald could have speared a smaller one instead. The impact with the other ship split theirs. Karsa found himself in waist-deep water with what he thought was the deck at his feet. Right in front of Karsa was his blood sword. Karsa grabbed it and let loose a war cry that Torvald said should have done the job of freezing the fish's little heart, and that they needed to get to another ship. There were more fish coming. They made their way to the impact site, and Torvald said the fish had blasted through the hull first. They were not fighting a genius, so they should hunt it. Karsa said to leave that part to him. Torvald said he could hardly stand. Karsa said he would kill it anyways. Torvald asked if he could watch. They made their way below the deck and found the fish in ankle-deep water. It was on its side and already injured. Karsa climbed on top of it, driving his sword into its belly. The fish hit him with its tail as hard as a horse, sending Karsa flying and stunning him when he landed. Torvald said he was still plenty fast, and that there was food and other supplies down there. Karsa passed out. Karsa woke to an awful stench. He saw the fish with its belly cut open and two corpses lying on the ground. Karsa tried not to gag and made his way to the stairs. Torvald had collected supplies and had them piled near the railing. Karsa looked around but didn't see Torvald. He noticed a large gash in the deck made from sorcery, and there were no bodies. The black wood that made up the ship was something Karsa didn't recognize. It seemed to emanate darkness. It was simple, and Karsa found that appealing. Torvald reappeared and was happy to see Karsa was awake. Karsa said he must find his lack of strength frustrating. Torvald said it was to be expected, and he had found food, so he should eat while he tells Karsa what he had found. Torvald had found a small boat with oars and enough water for a week and a half, and if they were sensible, they have more than enough food for no matter Karsa's appetite. Torvald passed Karsa some bread and he began to eat. The small boat had enough room for 20 or so lowlanders. They would need to modify it for Karsa. If Karsa wanted, they could check out some of the other ships. Karsa said he wanted to get the hell out of here as soon as possible. Torvald agreed and then asked if Karsa's rock-in-the-face's god claimed a warren. He believed Karsa didn't call the storm that sent them to this place, since Karsa had no memory of it. Karsa didn't even know what a warren was, saying the gods lived in a rock and in the dream world of the Teblor. Torvald asked if this dream world he spoke of looked anything like this place. Karsa simply said no. Torvald asked what if it had been flooded. Karsa said Torvald was reminding him of his friend Barath Guild, whose words didn't make sense, and described what he knew of the dream world as the shaman had said. Karsa said the place he had visited was different and that he had said more than enough. He would tell Torvald nothing more. Torvald said he was only trying to figure out where they were. Karsa said they were in a sea. There was no land nearby. Torvald understood, but asked why there was no sun, no light, no wind. What direction would they travel? Karsa said it didn't matter, and he had eaten enough for now. He wanted to finish loading the boat and leave. That was a pretty epic section, I think.
Oh, I would 100% agree. 100% agree. So what do you got for us?
I mean, a few thoughts there, but I feel like it's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of action, but I picked out a few things. My first one here, let's see. So we've got undead Teblor, lowlanders, a warrior, and a child, an army of corpses. And again, like I was saying earlier, just makes me think of the Warren inside Dragnipur. I don't really know what to make of that or if there's a connection, but it just feels very similar to me. Like, how many different things would we have? Like, you've got people chained to a wagon, and now Karsa's got like these things that are kind of chained to him. And I don't know, unless he's got to like ask for forgiveness or something for these undead to like unchain themselves from him. I don't know. There just seems to be similarities that it just seems too similar. I don't really know how to word it any other way.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like I have some ideas, but I think that those get revealed a little bit later, potentially. Actually, I think in the section. So I could talk about it now, or we could wait.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so you didn't summarize Karsa's description of the dream world, but did you notice any similarities between that description and what we've read already?
You might have to remind me. It's not coming to my head right now.
So Karsa says the Teblor dream world is a place of no hills, where mosses and lichens cling to half-buried boulders, where snow makes low dunes sculpted by cold winds, where strange brown-haired beasts run in packs in the distance.
You think this is like where the Mybe is?
I think that this is the Talan. This is the Talan, which, going back to your first comment, I mean, undead Teblor, that part we didn't really get revealed. Lowlanders would be the Rivi spirits, right? That are part of the Mybe. And now a warrior, I don't know if that necessarily means tool or what or who that warrior is, but the child could be Silver Fox. And then an army of corpses could be the Talani Mass, now that they're in or taking shape with inside,
I think that makes quite a bit of sense.
So, I mean, there's definitely a correlation here. And in a couple of sections, we will get to a nice talking point about the seven. I would imagine that because of that talking point, this would indicate that this is where the Mybe is supposed to reside. I don't think she's quite there as far as where we are compared to Memories of Ice and House of Chains. Black Coral at this point in time does not exist.
Probably not quite yet. My next thought here. So these giant fucking catfish. Do you ever watch the show River Monsters?
No, but I know of it.
Oh, dude, it's a cool show. Anyways, so there's like there's like two different kinds of giant catfish. So there's giant Mekong catfish, which I think are in like China and stuff, Southeast Asia. And apparently they can be up to like 10 feet long and weigh like 800 pounds. And then there's the Wells catfish, which I've seen like videos on YouTube of people like catching those, and they're like insanely massive. Like, yeah, 16 and a half feet long, 700 pounds. Like, look them up. It's wild.
All right.
I think the Wells catfish, I don't know where they're from originally. From what I kind of remember, it almost sounds like they're an invasive species. Yeah, they could definitely eat a person if they wanted to. Like, I wouldn't want to be swimming in the water with those things swimming around. I can guarantee you that.
Oh, for sure.
But I think that must be like an inspiration.
I would imagine, or just, very imaginative, but either way works. It was epic to envision.
Yeah. Torvald asking Karsa if he could watch him kill the fish. I was like, that's just funny to me. It's just like, I want to watch you kill something. I liked it.
Yeah, it made me chuckle too.
Let's see here. Just Torvald, he wants to figure out where they're at, right? And Karsa's just like, well, we're in the ocean. There's no land nearby. And Torvald's like, yeah, I get that, but there's not a sun here. Did you not notice this? There's no light. We don't have any wind. How do we know which way to go? And Karsa's just like, doesn't matter. And that just, I don't know if it struck me as odd, but it made me think either he's got blind faith or blind confidence, or maybe there's just not much difference between those two things. Maybe they're just kind of one and the same.
Maybe. It's also probably one of those things where he makes a very astute observation, like, we're in the middle of the ocean, dude. Pick a direction. It's no matter what direction you pick, it's going to be luck as to whether there's shore at the other end.
Yeah, right. You have no way of knowing if you're going to go 15 miles to get to land or 1,500, that would be kind of an overwhelming thing to deal with, I think, being lost at sea.
Yeah, that would be, yeah. I don't know if I would be very positive.
No, I would not be. But I think I'd be too afraid to kill myself because I'd have to just jump in the ocean and get eaten by a shark or drown. Or I'm going to dehydrate or starve to death. And those both sound miserable too. So you don't really have any good options here.
Yeah, absolutely. One thought that I had before we move on here is when Karsa looks at the carvings on the ship as he's on the platform about to scale up. Did you get the sense that there were 3 combatants?
I don't really remember what I thought because I kind of struggled with that. I didn't understand if they were on the side of the ship because that didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, why you would have carvings on the side of the ship or where they were.
I thought that they were just on the hull themselves. To me, there were 2 distinct crafts. There were the Tistidur, which are the giant big black ships. And then there were the smaller raider ships, which were dyed black or painted black, but were not actually a black wood. And they're climbing a raider ship, right? That's what they bumped up against.
I thought so.
Yeah. So what else? What did we find out in Memories of Ice about some of the boats?
Barghast boats.
Yeah. Remember when they were told that the carvings underneath, I forget what it's called, underneath Capistan, the main tower thing. I forget what it's called. Why? This just happened. We just read it.
Jalarkin's Tower?
No, it wasn't Jalarkin's Tower. The Thrall. It was under the Thrall. There you go. There we go. See, it just took me a minute. I don't always suck. Yeah, under the Thrall. Remember how I can't remember his name. I am a terrible reader of this series.
You're definitely not.
Hatan's brother, Kafal. How Kafal is digging in these ancestral boats, right, that they uncovered underneath the Thrall, and Paran's kind of mulling and musing around the Thrall, and Kafal's hey, get down here, blah blah blah. And he points out the epic battles between, or the carvings on the side of the hull, and he tells Paran that they are battling Tistidur.
I do not remember that, but good callback.
But also, Karsa, when he's looking at these boats, what does he say? They look what?
Like Tabelor, but smaller.
I don't know if they say taller or smaller. Do they? I think he just says they look Tabelor, or very similar to Tabelor.
Yeah, something like that.
So, at this point in time, I'm starting to think that the Talanimas, the Moranth, the Barghast, and the Tabelor are in some way, shape, or form related. Rivi,
I think there is some relation, some correlation there for sure.
Yeah, but what doesn't make sense is if the 7, I mean, the only thing that kind of like counters that is like when we're told that the 7 have like exodus the spirits of the Teblar, that makes me like, why would you like boot your own kind? You know what I mean? I mean, they're your spirits too.
Yeah, I don't know.
So just yeah, I mean, that's who I'm assuming these like little boats are, these raider boats. They're Barghast or someone related to the Barghast or potentially the Barghast ancestors,
I did not even think of that, but I do remember. Yeah, good catch.
Thanks. I try. There was something about that like phrase that like was bugging me, and it wasn't until you like read it where I'm like, oh, yeah. So,
well, I'm glad I could help in that way then.
Well, thanks, ma'am. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, I don't think I've got anything either. I mean, that was a really fun section. A lot happened.
Yep. And now, in my opinion, comes the best 2 sections.
These ones are good. I don't know. I like the second half, if you will, of this chapter. I liked a lot.
I mean, I like the build up. That's why we say there's a first half and a second half. The first half is really just building this up, and I feel like it makes it that much more impactful. So, but yeah, the last section that we read is definitely a close second. But these next 2 are probably my favorite.
Oh, you ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Karsa felt stronger with each day, taking longer turns at the oars. The sea was shallow, and more than once the dory ground onto the shoals. As Karsa's strength returned, the supply of food quickly dwindled, and though neither spoke of it, despair had become an invisible passenger. The measure of time was based on sleep and wakefulness, but that pattern collapsed as it was apparent that Karsa needed less rest than Nam. They were down to their last cask of water. The ache was almost gone from Karsa's shoulders, and he had lost all sense of thought. His only focus was maintaining a straight course. Nam's eyes opened. He was still exhausted. He wasn't really acting like his talkative self. Karsa suspected that he may be sick, as they hadn't spoken in some time. The Daru slowly sat up, then stiffened, and said that they had company. Karsa turned around to see a large black ship bearing down on them. Behind the ship, on the horizon, ran a dark straight line. Karsa collected his sword and stood up. Nam stated that it was the strangest coast he had ever seen. Karsa said that it was a wall, which has some kind of beach. He turns his gaze back to the closing ship and informs Nam that it was a ship similar to the ones that was troubled by the raiders. Nam says that it for sure is, but bigger, and speculates that it must be a flagship. They both could see figures now. Nam told Karsa that they weren't human and has a feeling that they're not friendly. Karsa said that he had seen one of them before in the belly of the catfish. Nam says that the beach was 3,000 paces away, and as he had guessed, the sea didn't belong, as beyond the beach was the wreckage of an entire world. Karsa said that yet there were still ships, to which Nam stated didn't belong either. The huge ship slid towards them, then came to a stop. A rope ladder snaked down, but Karsa was already scaling the hull. He reached the forecastle rail and hopped over it. A ring of gray-skinned warriors faced him. Behind them was a pile of severed heads. Some were lowlander, but similar in features to that of the gray warriors. Though the skins were black, ice rippled up Karsa's spine as he saw countless eyes among the severed heads shift towards him. One of the gray warriors snapped something, his expression contemptuous as his tone. Behind Karsa, Nam reached the railing. The gray speaker seemed to be awaiting some type of response. Nam told Karsa that they are being told to kneel. Karsa said that he would not kneel while he was chained, so why would he now? Nam said it was because he counted 16 of them. Karsa replied that it didn't matter the number. They probably have never fought a Teblar before. Karsa saw a couple of the gray-skinned warriors go for their swords. Karsa's blood sword flashed out and cut a sweeping slash across the entire circle of warriors. Blood sprayed and bodies tumbled over the low railing onto the middeck. The forecastle was now suddenly clear, outside of Nam and Karsa themselves. The warriors on the middeck unsheathed their swords, or their weapons, and edged towards the forecastle. Karsa tells Nam to witness while he takes the ship and leapt down amidst the enemy. 6 of the 7 were cut down. The last one turned and ran towards a doorway at the other end of the middeck. He grabbed a massive harpoon and flung it at Karsa. The Templar caught it and closed in on the fleeing man, cutting him down at the threshold of the doorway. With the harpoon and the blood sword, he entered the gloom of the passage beyond the doorway, 2 steps down into a wide galley with a wooden table in the center, and at the opposite end, through a narrow passage, was an ornate door that he shoved aside. 4 attackers, and in moments 4 bodies were dying on the ground. A 5th figure, seated in a chair, was drawing on sorcery. Karsa surged forward, and the magic flash sputtered and drove the harpoon through the man's chest. Karsa calls out to Uragal to witness his Templar rage. Silence followed his words. Something cold rippled through Karsa, the breath of someone unknown, nameless, but filled with rage. He shrugged the sensation off. On the table were maps and charts. Karsa turned as he heard Nam enter the cabin. He tells Karsa that he doesn't need to worry about the oarsmen. Karsa asked if they were slaves. Nam replied that they were anything but, as they have no heads. Nam suspects that the Eater were just as lost as they were. They exchange a few sentences before turning their attention to the mage. Karsa said that he didn't understand why they don't use weapons, as their magic was pitiful. Nam explains that it was because sorcery usually worked, as most attackers don't survive getting hit by magic, as it tends to rip them apart. Karsa made his way back to the doorway. He returned to the deck and started to take trophies, and then tossed the bodies overboard. The Daru struggled with the severed heads, following them about, so he wrapped their heads in sealskin hide. Nam explains that they were Tistandi. Karsa wonders who they were. Nam explains that they were some fighting in Brood's liberation army on Genebacus. He explains that they were ancient people that worshipped darkness. Karsa muttered the word darkness and then commented that it was a place where one is left blind. 'Twas a strange thing to worship. Nam replied that it was the most realistic worship of all, as how many of us bow before a god in desperate hope that we can shape our fate. Nam says that it was a good thing that the severed heads couldn't talk, or they'd find themselves in a ghastly debate. Karsa asked if Torvald doubted his own words. Torvald said that he always did, but on a more mundane level, words are like gods, a simple means of keeping the terror at bay. He admits that he will likely have nightmares about this event until his dying breath. Karsa tells Nam that his words are foolish. Nam replies and asks how many souls Karsa has delivered unto darkness. The Templar said that he didn't think it was darkness. After a moment, he looked away, struck by a sudden realization. A year ago, he would have struck down someone for saying what Nam had said. A year ago, words had been blunt, awkward things. Not a characteristic of the Templar, but Karsa. Bayroth had flung many edged words at Karsa, a constant source of amusement for the clever warrior, but dulled by Karsa's own ignorance of their intent. Torvald's endless words, and on top of that, all he'd experienced so far, were instructions on how complex the outside world was to the Templar. He thought to himself that he had been living blind in darkness. He returned his gaze to the Daru. He was still wrapping heads, and Karsa thought to himself, who has dragged this cloth from his eyes? Was it Uragal? No, it wasn't Uragal. He knew that for certain, for the otherworldly rage he felt in the cabin, that icy breath that swept through him, that had belonged to his god. Karsa found himself oddly indifferent to this thought. The 7 faces in the rock never spoke of freedom. The Templar were their servants, their slaves. Nam observes that Karsa looks unwell and then apologizes for what he had said. Karsa said not to worry about it and said that they should return to their He stopped talking as splashes of rain hit him. Swearing at this, the Daru began gathering supplies. The foul-smelling downpour thickened, creating murky, impenetrable walls on all sides of the ship. Making their way through the muck, they resupplied their dory. They pushed out from the ship's hull, with Karsa at the oars. Within moments, the ship was lost from sight, and around them, the rain let up. 5 more strokes, and they were out of the rain completely. The strange coastline was visible ahead, slowly getting closer.
I was not expecting to find the Solanda again, like this soon.
Yeah, me neither, dude. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. Yes. You know?
Because I remember when we talked to Mora and Lee at whatever point it was, this, they told us we'll find out more later, but I felt like it was further down the line for whatever reason.
Well, they said that the Solanda happens in 3 separate events. Where we get more about it. So we've gotten 2 now.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't think it was going to be coming up so soon. So I was pretty surprised reading this, but I was like, holy crap, this is it. We're getting more.
Yeah. But it's just crazy. Like, I think that like the coolest part, and this may resonate with other readers of the series, but the Solanda in Deadhouse Gates is just like, it is stuck in my mind. Like, I loved that. And for like this to explain kind of what happened, like it just makes the picture that much better, that much brighter. And now, like when I'm reading Deadhouse Gates, I'm going to be like, Arza and Nam were just here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was kind of the other part, because what I remember, like in Deadhouse Gates, I kind of felt like, well, it must have been like this for a while. It hasn't been. What has it been? Days, maybe a couple weeks or something. I wouldn't think any more than a month or.
I would imagine at this point, Felazin, Bowden, and Haboric are near the Otatero coastline, if not being rescued by Culp, right?
Yeah, they're probably not too far off from making it to the ship.
Yeah, so and that's just, again, that's the cool part is like, I feel like this is an unexpected treat, is that like, yes, they're all happening at different parts of the world, so to speak, but like it's almost kind of like a similar timeline. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like it's just cool. And all it takes, earlier in the book they mentioned Pale. That was literally 3 sentences, but you're immediately brought back to that in Gardens of the Moon,
Yeah.
Same here. So it's just cool how that happens. And I don't really know if like I've ever ran into a book series that really utilizes parallel stories.
Well, it's just it feels weird that some of this stuff is starting to tie in together so like soon, when we still have 6 more books after this.
Right. And I know that like people who have struggled with the Malazan reading, it's always recommended that you start and you just read the first 3, and if you like it after that, then keep going. But I mean, there's so many things that tie into the first 2 books, right? And how can you not get a better sense if you don't keep going?
Right. Well, what do you got? What'd you think here?
So first thought is I love this line where they're mindlessly rowing, Karsa is getting better. Nam is sleeping more. They're unable to tell time. And this line where despair had become an invisible passenger. I just really loved, it almost personified some type of apparition that is despair. So imagine despair as a ghost or a spirit or an embodied thing rowing with them. So
yeah.
The one thing that was like a little confusing to me is that Karsa, 3 things seem to happen at the same time, and I'm a little confused as to like what is particularly happening here. But Karsa observes behind the ship that is approaching them. So I'd imagine that Karsa and Nam are between the Tistidor ship and the coast that they are seeing.
Yep.
So But Karsa says behind the ship ran a dark line. So that means there's this dark line, the Edor ship, Torvald and Karsa, and then the coastline. Is that supposed to be like the Warren in the final stages of closing? Or is this supposed to be a representation of the coast?
I thought the black line trailing the ship was just kind of like its like wake. That's leaving.
Maybe. I guess I imagined it as like perpendicular to the ship instead of parallel, or like riding behind it. Because it says behind the ship on the horizon ran a dark line or a dark straight line.
I guess I don't know. That was just how I took it. Maybe that's not right, but
who knows? But it doesn't matter. I mean, it's not like a huge detail. In my mind, I originally thought that it was a Warren closing, which kind of explains the ship kind of coming out of nowhere or making it feel like it comes out of nowhere. I don't know if you felt that because it just kind of like appeared.
Yeah, it was just kind of there suddenly.
The next thing that I had is just the ice rippling up Karza's spine as he saw the countless eyes among the severed heads just kind of all shift towards him. I just kind of like imagined it as like a unison thing, like they all just like turn their heads.
I think I like the little I don't remember which, is it the third Harry Potter movie when he gets on the bus and there's like the little shrunken head?
Yep. Yeah.
Imagine just like a bunch of those all looking to him at the same time. Yeah, I liked your little head snap. That was good.
Yeah. So the other thing that I had here is just this after Karza, kills the mage in the chair that eventually Haboric, Culp, Bowden, and Felazin stumble across, and they're like, oh, we don't know what this is. And then Haboric's like, I think this is a Tistidor. I thought that they had died out a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like that type of, like, it's just cool to be reminded of that shit. But after that, Karza has this like cold ripple through him, the breath of someone unknown, nameless, but filled with rage. And Karza kind of later on speculates that it's his god. But is this Uragal or is this the crippled god?
I don't know that I have an answer. Which way are you leaning?
I honestly don't know. I mean, the cold rippled through Karza kind of made me think immediately of Jaghut, but since the Edur are kind of there, I've speculated that they're. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty confident that the Edur are working with the crippled god. Maybe I don't know. Nameless. I would imagine that like this presence that he felt, he would recognize if they were one of the seven. I'm guessing that it's the crippled god who are, as far as a hierarchy, right? You've got the Edur, you've got the seven faces in the rock, and then you've got the crippled god. So the crippled god is like the seven's god. So therefore, it is Karza's god.
I guess my hesitation is like I didn't think the crippled god had like an ice born or anything. Like all his shit was hot, right?
Yeah,
flames and that type of thing.
Maybe it was because at this point in time in Memories of Ice, who's Gotho's brother again? What used to be the Herald, Death's Herald?
What's his name? Gethal or something?
No, that's Gafal. Gethos? No. I forget his name. But anyway, maybe it's him like observing what's happening to the Edur and reporting, or he'll report that to the crippled god. I don't know. Yeah, why can't I remember his name? I am so bad at this. This sucks. Okay.
Don't be so hard on yourself, man.
Yeah. There's a lot of characters.
I'm not remembering either, so.
Yeah. Gethos. It's Gethos. No. Fuck it.
You're gonna wake up at like 3 in the morning and be like,
I'm gonna text you. I'm gonna text you.
That's fine. I'll see you when I get up.
The other thing that I had is this comment about Nam saying that darkness was the most realistic worship of all, because how many of us, right? Us as in like everybody who worships a god, hope that we can shape our fate. And I loved that line, because in this world, that seems to be true. They're kind of blindly following a god. Another thing that I thought was cool is just this characteristic, these words, and how a year ago he would have been like all pissed off at the intent behind these words, a constant source of amusement for Bayroth, but dulled by Karsa's own ignorance of their intent. And I just love that he's kind of having this epiphany. Like he's finally realizing that Bayroth's words had intent behind what he was saying. Not that we didn't know that, but it's kind of awesome to see reflection from Karsa. Like, to me, this is where he is changing character. This is like the pivotal moment where he is no longer the Karsa that we know from chapter 1 and 2. There are remnants of him for sure, but now he's focused on something else.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to fully lose that part of himself. Is just, I mean, well, like what? Because he's supposed to be like 18, right? Like you're kind of a dumb kid at 18 most of the time still, and it's now he's kind of having to grow up fast here.
Yeah, it's I mean, and even this next comment that I have, living blind, darkness, right? Like Karsa is quick to criticize living in darkness, but now he's realizing that he's been in darkness too. So I just love how that kind of correlated with each other. And now he's like, you know, as he says, like, who's lifted this cloth from my eyes?
He sees the light.
Yeah. Yeah. All in all, again, my favorite section, just because of how much it brings me back to Deadhouse Gates. You know, the heads being wrapped. Now we understand that it was Torvald Nam who was just like freaked out and wrapped these heads. There's an answer.
I wonder if like next time we see it, it'll be further back, you know, like before that happens.
Maybe. I
mean, that's about the only thing that makes sense.
I mean, we kind of know what happens after. So
it burns, right? What happens after?
The Talani Mass show up from the Karan clan looking for rogue kin, and then they close the hole.
Yeah, the one sacrifices itself. What am I thinking of? What am I thinking of? Like the dragon coming and they jump off. Oh, is that when that's how they end up there, isn't it?
That's how they escape the Salanda.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of then.
Yeah. But then, you know, the Salanda comes back because Stormy, Gessler, and all those guys, outside of the Battle of the Butterflies or whatever that was called.
Sakala Crossing?
Yeah, there we go. They show up kind of at the end of that. So, all right.
Ready
well, yeah, I'm ready. Let's keep grooving.
All right. On the forecastle of the ship, just after Karsa and Torvald disappeared into the rain, 7 figures arose from the mud. Broken bones, wounds that bled nothing. One of the figures hissed angrily, "Each time we seek to draw the knot tight." The figure was cut off as another spoke. "He cuts it." A third voice spoke, saying, "The failure belonged to the Teist Edur, and if punishment was called for, it should be in an answer to their arrogance." The first speaker spoke, saying it wasn't up to them, as they were not the masters of the scheme. One of the others spoke, saying neither were the Teist Edur. The first spoke again, saying that may be so, but they're all given their tasks. Karsa Orlong is still alive. He is their only concern right now. Of them, the figure said he begins to know doubt. The first said his journey still continued. It is up to them, with what little power they possess, to extend and direct his path. One of the others thought there had been little success so far. The first said this was untrue, as the shattered warren is awake again, and the broken heart of the First Empire begins to bleed again, and soon will become a flood. They only need to set their chosen warrior on the right current. The one named Barak was given instructions to begin preparations. Scatter Otadrol dust in the cabin, as the Edur's warren was still open and would become a growing wound, and it was not the time to unveil that. One spoke, saying they needed to work quickly. It believed they were being hunted. The remaining 6 turned to the speaker, who told them there were kin following them. I forgot that was such a short section.
Mm-hmm. But a good one. I remember my reaction as soon as I read that last line. I'm like, they're fucking UMass. I knew it. Knew it.
Yeah, I don't think I really made that connection until you said something.
Oh, really?
I'm trying to remember. I'm not sure. So yeah, I don't know. Again, I like this chapter a lot, but some of these sections I just struggled with as far as summarizing and maybe even understanding things a little bit too until, we started texting and talking and doing this. But
oh, sweet.
I think my only thought on this section, they're talking about scattering lateral dust in the cabin. And for whatever reason, to understand that they were talking about the captain's cabin in the ship. I think it was probably when I was summarizing it, that didn't make sense to me when I read it the first time. And then when I was reading and summarizing it, just kind of clicked like, oh shit, he's talking about the captain's ship here. So
yeah, except I don't remember from Deadhouse Gates if they found any Otatero dust in the cabin. I don't remember that, but I mean, obviously it doesn't work because the Warren ends up going astray anyway.
So I kind of thought you're talking about the Warren the tear that they send the Imus up to seal, right?
Yep.
I kind of thought that was the one that Karsa and everybody goes through here later on.
Could be. It could be. I guess. Maybe. I feel like we're in a Warren within a Warren within a Warren at this point, so it's hard to get any type of relativity, but yeah.
You're getting tired of all this Inception shit.
But yeah, that makes sense now. We'll find out as we read this section. Maybe I summarized it and just forgot about it.
Or we just had different takes on it,
Yeah. We know one Warren gets closed, but yeah, that could either be the Warren that the Tistidor opened when he was attacking Karza, or it was the Warren that Silgar used to escape.
I guess I didn't really have anything else, probably because, like I said, when I was typing this, I guess I don't remember if I had realized that these were Tystandi or not, or if, once you mentioned it, and I was like, oh shit, okay, I get it. So I guess I didn't really have any thoughts here that I had jotted down. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah, do you remember in, I think it was chapter 2, when Karza vows to Uragal that he would kill the Talani Mass?
Yes.
Being that the Seven are Talan.
Is it like going to have to kill his own gods?
Right. So is this maybe where they're talking about that he begins to know doubts? Is this maybe what they're referring to? Is the fact that he's already vowed to kill the Talani Mass, but maybe they're like, you know what, that's probably just empty because we've kept the Teblar in such a state of unknowing and no education about where they came from that I can't be insulted by this because it's our doing. But I just thought it was interesting.
Sure.
So I don't know if that's like what do we do? Because he's vowed to kill the Amass, even though he doesn't really know. But as he continues to figure things out, he's going to eventually tie it to us, which is then going to make his vow validated. So do we cut him loose now, or do we try to redirect him? So, which is kind of the sense that I get from this section. Is they're well, we've seemed to have failed, but let's maybe not give up quite yet.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
But yeah, man, I'm ready to finish my section.
Is this your last one?
Yep, go out with some popcorn.
Yeah.
So, all right. The wreckage of an entire land had drawn up alongside the massive wall. Some parts of the wall were not even visible with how stuff was floating there. As they neared the wall, Torvald suggested that Karsa slow the dory down, or they'd ground themselves on all the wreckage. Karsa slowed the dory, and they began to drift, the hull nudging the floating debris. After a moment, they noticed there was a current, pulling their craft along the edge. Nam asked Karsa if this was some type of enjoyment ride. Karsa told him no, and that there was a breach in the wall. The current was pulling them along faster now. Karsa explained that there was an indentation in the shoreline, with many things stuck where the wall should be, a makeshift dam, so to speak. Karza asked Nam if he could hear the roar of water. Nam said that now he could, and then he spotted it. He tells the Irid warrior that they should try to avoid it. Karza could sense the tension in Nam's tone and took to the oars and drew the dory away from the verge. The hull started to feel sluggish and the water swirled around them. Torvald shouted that there were people near the breach, a wrecked boat. The breach was on the Templar's left as he pulled the dory across the current. He saw where Torvald was pointing and saw that it was the slave master and his men. They were waving them over. Karza stated that he could not defeat the current, and Nam stated that this was likely how Silgar and his men got their boat stuck. Nam suggests that they avoid that scenario. Karza told him to keep an eye out for submerged logs as he angled the dory closer to the shore. He asked if the lowlanders were armed. Nam replied and said that they were not, but they looked to be in pretty bad condition and they seemed pretty hungry. Karza told Nam to take some harpoons as that hunger could drive them to desperation. The dory landed on what it could and Torvald climbed out with a rope and harpoon. Karza turned to see the 3 starved Nathi. They made no move to help. In fact, they seemed to be getting as far back on their makeshift log island would allow. The breach's roar was loud, but still at a distance. Closer, though, came sounds of cracks and shifting noises. The log jam was coming loose. Torvald tied the dory to various branches and trees. Karza stepped ashore, bloodsword in hand, eyes fixated on Silgar. The slave master attempted to retreat further, near where the 3 Nathi and a 4th body that had been picked clean. Silgar told Karza that the Templar should listen to what he has to say, as he can save them. Karza didn't believe Silgar at first, and thought he was trying to talk his way out of the situation. Nam and Damisk combined were able to convince Karza that there was no ill intention. A large section of the log jam suddenly broke away. Just behind Silgar, Karza told Nam to untie the dory. Damisk, Silgar, and Borug scrambled forward and got into the dory. Silgar announced that he would open a portal. Torvald asked why he couldn't do this before. Silgar replied that there wasn't a pathway on the sea before, but now someone has opened a gate. The dory scraped free of the now crumbling island of logs. They were swung wildly into the sweeping current. They rode the tumbling and turning wreckage towards the breach. Where the wall had broken away, there was a large cloud of mist. Beyond it, there seemed to be nothing at all. Silgar pointed to where Karza needed to steer the boat. He was making gestures with his hands. He watched all but Silgar hunker down as they raced towards the edge. Karza called out Urgal's name. Then there was darkness, and they were falling. The dory had shattered on impact, sending its occupants into the water. Coughing, Nam arrived next to the Templar, using an oar for a flotation device. Nam asked Karza what had happened. Karza replies that they had gone through the Sorcerer's Gate. Damisk's voice called out and Karza shouted a reply. Soon others were gathering near the Templar, using anything they could for a flotation device. Karza asked Silgar where they were, and Silgar snapped back that he had no idea. He goes on to explain how he used the Warren, and he knew that they were at sea, but with no coastline in sight. Damisk swam into view, struggling with Borug, as he reached out to take hold of the water cask. Silgar kicked him away. Silgar hissed that the water cask barely held his weight, and then asked what happened to Borug. Torvald moved over to allow room for Damisk at the oar shaft. Damisk said he didn't know, but speculated that he must have hit his head. Karza reached out and said that he would take Borug, and took the man's wrists and, like a shawl, slung the man on his back. Torvald suddenly shouted that he had seen a light. The others swung around and saw nothing. Silgar said that it was a figment of Nam's imagination, and if he could, he'd open his warren right now. Torvald defended himself and explained that he wasn't crazy, and he knew what he saw. Karza told him to lead them onward then. Silgar hissed they could go in the wrong direction, and it would be safer to just wait. Karza said that Silgar, could wait. Silgar, like a child, stated that he had the fresh water. Karza interrupted him to say that he would have to kill the slave master, and therefore he wouldn't need the water anymore. Torvald chuckled and said that it was Teblar logic. Silgar relented and said that he would follow. The Daru set off at a slow and steady pace, the rest following in his wake. The Teblar was not particularly tired, and it seemed he possessed a natural buoyancy. Apart from Bolrug's knees occasionally obstructing Karza's kicks, he was having a pretty easy go. There was something odd about Bolrug's knees, though, and he stopped to check them out. They had been severed beneath the kneecaps. Torvald glanced back and asked the Urid what was wrong. Karza asked if there were catfish in this water. Nam said that it was unlikely as they were in salt water, not fresh. Karza resumed his swimming. There was no reoccurrence of the light that Torvald had seen earlier. They continued swimming through perfectly calm water. After a time, Sogar complained that this was foolish and they were exhausting themselves. Torvald interjected to ask Karza why he had asked about the catfish. Something huge rose up to land on Karza's back, driving him under. He was able to escape and resurface. Even as he reached the surface, just an arm's length away, the shark was chewing on what little remained of Bolrug. There was screaming behind. Karza turned around and studied the group. He faced the shark again, which seemed to be struggling on swallowing an arm. With a grunt, he swam towards it. After a brief scuffle, the Teblar was able to cut the shark's belly and pull free the remnants of Bolrug and swam his way back towards the surface. Torvald was heard shouting, and Karza turned and observed that Nam was standing in waist-deep water, waving his arms wildly. Dragging Bolrug, he swam his way forward. The others were on a small strip of sand, gathering their senses. Karza dropped the body and took a moment to take in the sights and the smells. Torvald explained to Karza that when a shark takes someone, you don't go after the poor bastard. Karza rumbled and said that Bolrug was in his care, and the shark had no right to him. Silgar makes some snide remarks about Bolrug's body. Karza and Torvald have a conversation about how no one would believe Nam when he was retelling this tale. Silgar suggests that they get some sleep as they can thank Mael for being alive. Torvald jabs back by saying that he'd rather give thanks to a Teblar warrior than any sea god. The pair converse about the shark being a favorite of Mael's before Karza decides to take a stroll on the beach. Torvald agrees and says that he thinks he spotted the light slightly above the beach, and he would like to investigate. As they are walking, Torvald takes the time to thank Karza for saving his life. Karza in return says that they both have saved each other's lives. They said nothing more for a long time as they moved well out of sight of Silgar and Damisk. Finally, they stumble upon a tower hunched over the beach, and Torvald pointed it out to Karza. The tower's triangular window on the seaward side had a dull yellow light illuminating from it. A narrow footpath winded around the tower. A gutted fisher boat lay off to the side. Torvald asked if they should pay a visit. Karza said that they should, and they made their way to the footpath. They speculate as to how they will be received and started to rant before Karza cuts him off. They had reached the base of the tower. They saw no entrance, but the trail curved around to the other side. The Daru reached out and touched the tower and said the tower was nothing but fossils. Karza asked what were fossils. Torvald explained to the Teblar what fossils were. They see more fossils and converse amongst themselves about them. A deep laugh made them swing around. The man was huge by lowlander standards, and skin so dark it was almost black. He flashed a smile and said that he heard screams from the sea and now a pair of skulkers jabbering in Daru in his tower's front yard. He took Karza in and said that he had thought that the Teblar was a fen, but then said that Karza was no fen. Karza responded that he was Teblar. Torvald stepped forward and tells the man that he is speaking of Daru, or his language of Daru is impressive, and guesses that the man is Malazan based on the accent he detected, but also guessed that the man is Napan. The Daru asked if they were on Quantali. The man grunted and turned away. The pair followed behind. The door was on the inland side, and the man pushed open the door and went inside. Both Torvald and Karza stood for a moment staring up at a massive skull that formed the top of the doorframe. The man poked his head out and said that the skull was impressive and that he collected most of its body. He tells them to come inside as he's brewing some tea. The pair entered the tower. They were stunned once they got inside. Inside the tower was hollow, with flimsy scaffolding projecting out from the seaside wall. The wooden framework held up the tower half of the stone skeleton. The man explains his plan for the tower and how it hadn't worked, so he would have to extend the roof, which was tricky. The pair made their way to where the man was sitting by a brick hearth. Nam introduces himself, to which the strange man seems to be familiar with his family. The conversation moves on to their current location, and the man reveals that they are north coast of the Seven Cities. The sea yonder is the Otatero Sea. Nam asked what the man's name was. The man said there wasn't an easy answer to that, but locally he's called Bayanrock, which was early for a keeper. Beyond this, he's not known at all, except as someone who died long ago, and he plans on keeping it that way. Nam asks about the boat on the shore, and Keeper says that this question had made him nervous, and it wasn't good if he got nervous. Torvald relents and says that he would ask no more questions. Keeper then told Nam that this was a wise choice. However, he would feel better if his silent friend said a thing or two. Karza said that he had nothing to say. Keeper said that he liked men with nothing to say. Karza said that Keeper was lucky, for he would not wish to be his enemy. Keeper says that he's had enemies a lot bigger than the Teblor, and most of them are dead now. Keeper suspects that they are hungry, but in order to eat his food, they have to help him dismantle the roof. Karza looked around and said that he would not work for Keeper, as digging up bones and assembling them was a waste of time. Torvald, in a weird way, tries to apologize to Keeper for Teblor logic or pragmaticism. Even though Karza was anticipating a violent reaction and his hand was on the blood sword, he was unable to avoid the fist that connected with his lower ribs. Bones cracked and the air in his lungs exploded outward. He had never been hit so hard in his life. He collapsed and blacked out. When he woke up, he found himself laying in a pile of stone chips. Groaning with pain, Karza sat up. He climbed to his feet. Glancing up, he saw Torvald and Keeper balanced on a wooden framework directly beneath the ceiling, which was already partly dismantled. Torvald said he would invite the Teblor up, but he doesn't think the wooden framework would hold. Keeper interjected and said that it would, and told the lad to get up here. Reluctantly, Karza reached up to grab the nearest crossbeam. The climb was agonizing, but he eventually made it. Keeper was staring at him and was surprised that the Teblor even managed to stand at all. He shows Karza the bandage on his hand and explains that when he broke the Teblor's ribs, he broke some bones of his own. He explains that it's his temper, and it's always been a problem, and he doesn't take insults well. He tells Karza to sit there, as they'll manage on their own. Karza sneered and said that he was of the Urid tribe, and the Lowlanders' tap didn't concern him. He straightened and put his shoulder against one side of the roof's limestone. Both men grabbed for the bloodsword straps as the Teblor toppled forward, a huge section of wall vanishing in front of them. A loud noise shook the tower from below. There was a moment where it seemed Karza would drag all three of them over, but Keeper had his leg around a pole, grunting as they pulled on the straps, slowly bringing the Teblor back onto the platform. Torvald slumped down to rest. Keeper chuckled and said that was easy, and said that they had both earned breakfast. Torvald coughed and told Karza that he had gone back down to the beach to retrieve Silgar and Damisk. They were not there where they had left them. Torvald explains that he had followed their tracks and appears that they had headed west. Karza said that Nam talked too much, and Keeper agreed that he does. They converse a bit about Keeper believing some parts of the story and not the other. Keeper suggested that they climb down so that he could cook them up a meal. Woo.
Yeah, that was the long one there.
Yeah, and very straightforward. I don't know if I really have a ton of things to talk about. Actually, I do. Weird. Okay, well, anyway.
You got a few.
Yeah, that's true. So the very first, I mean, obviously they're seeing this wall, the stone wall, and I think that you would agree that this is definitely the wall from the prologue.
Yes.
Which means that they're in a different world. Okay, wait a minute.
I think.
Oh, right. Sorry, I'm after. Yes.
Where like the Solanda is and everything.
Yeah. Why am I so fucking right? Yes. Because this is before Silgar opens his warren. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So this section can also be cut in half, right? Like you have the front half where they're transitioning from the warren to the Otaterral coast, right? Like that's, and then you have everything with Keeper as the other half. So, okay, moving on to my point. So the wreckage of an entire land had drawn up alongside the massive wall. I think that you and I can agree that this, I already said that. Okay, never mind. Yes, good. It's late. I'm getting tired.
Dude, it's not that late.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe you had a long day. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. I think it was just a long chapter, and a lot happens, but like in a straightforward type of action way. So, but this like log jam that Silgar and Damisk are chilling at. There were 3 Nathi and a 4th body that had been picked clean, and my comment was Tenniscowry in training. So they had eaten each other because.
I guess I didn't think of that. I figured it was birds or something. Or
well, they ate them.
Yeah, my favorite people, the Tenniscowry.
Mm-hmm. Yes, your favorite. Okay, yeah. So this part where like after they go through the warren, Karsa replies that they had gone through the Sorcerer's Gate. So my guess is that they must have barely made it through, because from what I understand is that some of the like the ore was sliced pretty cleanly.
And the bottom of the boat, I think.
Yeah, and the bottom of the boat. And I'm wondering if this is at first I thought that Borug legs got eaten by the shark, but I'm wondering if they got sliced clean by the warren.
I would think that's probably it.
Yeah. Because a shark's bite would be more serrated and torn up. So
and it probably smelt the blood, and that's maybe if he wasn't bleeding all over the place, they would have been fine.
Right. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I wasn't sure which way of the fence I leaned on. So, but I like the warren better than the shark.
I think that's probably how it went.
Yeah. So I didn't really like summarize this, but like there's a part in here where, you know, before the shark attack, Damisk is swimming with Borug. Borug is obviously either dead or unconscious at this point. And Damisk is trying to join Silgar on his like floating water cask, and Silgar kind of like kicks him away. And I didn't really summarize it because like that was more or less secondary action, but we find out that Karsa observes the water cask was more buoyant than Silgar had let on, and he was just being a dick.
Yeah. Nice job, Silgar.
Yeah. Asshole. I hope in the next chapter, like, Nam and Karsa catch up to him and just kill him.
That'd be cool. I'd be all right.
It sounds like that's the direction they're going to head to. So, I love this part where Karsa's like, well, you know what? I'm just going to kill you. Like his solution to everything, as we say. It was a nice drop of humor in such an unknown and mysterious situation, you know?
Yeah. That's what I love about him. It's just, there's a problem, just gonna kill it.
Yep. The other thing is, again, I didn't summarize it, but it's much better in the book. But I loved how Karsa takes out the shark. I loved that like scuffle. It wasn't exuberantly long, but it would have made this summary a lot longer if I hadn't included it. But I liked it. So,
dude, he fought a shark.
I know.
Who does that? Nobody does that.
Right. And
not nobody, but very few people.
And then even this next part, Karsa rumbled and said that Borug was in his care and the shark had no right to him. And I don't know if Karza, I think he's genuinely being sincere here. But me, I giggled at, this is probably some dark humor.
Yeah. I thought he was serious about it. Yeah, I thought it was genuine.
To me, though, it's dark humor. Like, I chuckled at this part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether that was the intention or not, I don't know, but I thought it was funny. Oh, yeah. This part where Torvald and Karza are kind of having a conversation about how no one would believe Nam about any of the retelling of this tale. And I just love how this is put in here. And I really enjoyed how Torvald is looking at the future here. I like his optimism despite his circumstances and literally the tale he would tell.
Yeah, it seems kind of like a far-fetched thing to be like, oh yeah, we went to some other place and there were these ships and we watched a catfish eat a dude and then we killed a giant one and then we had to fight off a shark and
fought a score of people on a boat. Yeah.
Sure you did.
Right.
But they did.
And my next thought is when Keeper mistakes the Teblar for a fen. Now, we haven't been introduced to fens, but I'm wondering if this is a clue as to who the Teblar are or were. Or maybe it's like a different species that's just bigger.
And because he only heard something, right? He hadn't seen him yet, had he?
It was like right after they met Keeper with his laughter.
Okay.
Yeah, he took Karza in and said that he had thought the Teblar was a fen. So I'm assuming that there's some similarities in characteristics, some physical characteristics there. The massive skull perched atop of the doorway. We kind of talked about it, but it seems to be a T-Rex skeleton, I guess. I would guess. And the body inside is the rest of the animal.
Seems like it.
Yeah, but the way it was described, it definitely makes me think T-Rex.
Tiny arms.
When Keeper kind of introduces himself as Bayanrock, he says that outside of this, he's not known at all, except as someone who died long ago. And he even mentions that he staged a drowning outside of Erin, which is in Seven Cities. So I know in Deadhouse Gates, kind of earlier on in the book, Coltane and Bolt were talking about someone who had drowned because of Lucine or something like that. And I can't remember their name. Admiral Knock. Is that what it is? No. Admiral Knock? Is that someone else?
That's someone else. But yeah, it was somebody that was high up.
Right, and he was under Kellanved's rule. Yeah, he was part of Kellanved's reign. But I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I don't either. I know I talked to Jan a little bit, and he said we're on the right track.
We're on the right track with who Keeper is?
Yeah.
What did you say? If you think it's someone from Kellanved's reign or ensemble?
I don't remember how I worded. I'd have to look back through my text thread with him. I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but I know I kind of had that aha moment, oh fuck, I can't remember exactly who it is, but it's it was one of those dudes, which is super vague, but
yeah, I'm pretty sure that they talk specifically about some type of captain drowning somewhere,
which didn't make sense because of he could swim,
right?
Yeah,
so yeah, it is whoever that guy is potentially. I just can't remember that person's name. So again, it'll be kind of cool, as I'm rereading the series, whenever that happens, to just point these out or to, there's a part where when Keeper's talking about that he's had enemies bigger than the Teblar and most of them are dead now. I'm wondering if that was a jab at the Teblar ancestors, or if that's again, he's talking about a different species that just happens to be bigger.
I think he was just kind of humble bragging a little bit. He's dude, you think you're hot shit, but you don't know who I am. I've fought bigger dudes than you, and they're dead now.
Yeah, fair enough. And then after he's knocked out, well, not knocked out, but punched in the ribs and passes out, and Keeper and Torvald are up on the scaffolding, trying to figure out how to get this wooden or the stone roof off, and they tell Karsa to come on up. He reluctantly reaches up to grab or to climb, but he has this like small conflict with himself of like, well, I'm hurt, so I'm unable to climb, but versus like showing weakness. So they just love that like little internal conflict of I'm hurt, but I can't show weakness. I can't show that I'm weak, but my body should probably rest, So I don't know why I like that. I do.
To me, you maybe like when you played football, maybe your coaches had a similar thing, like, are you hurt or are you injured?
Right.
And I think Karsa is injured, but it doesn't matter. He's, like you said, he's not going to show weakness.
Yeah, true. My last thought is when Keeper was like, he chuckles to himself and he's like, I could just imagine him like wiping his hands and going, well, that was easy. Karsa essentially just pushed the whole fucking roof off.
Evo.
Yeah. But then it's like, who's actually stronger? Because like, why couldn't Keeper just do that? Why does he need help moving a roof if he punches so hard that a Templar has ever felt? Harder than any, you know what I mean? Like, maybe punching and shoving stones is different, but it's got to be some type of strength there.
Well, it's like this is going to be a similar analogy. It's, are you tough or are you strong?
Yeah, fair. All right.
And sometimes you can be both, but maybe Keeper is tough, but he's not as strong.
Maybe. I guess a dumb thing to get hung up on, but no worries.
It's just not a dumb thing. Yeah.
Why can't he just move the stone roof if he's so strong? It's not important. It's cool. We can move on. It's okay.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this thing up here, huh?
Wrap it up.
Karsa ate 2 helpings of breakfast prepared by Keeper. Then was thirsty, so Keeper sent them to the freshwater spring. After Torvald drank deep, he told Karsa that he had been thinking. Karsa said he should do that more often instead of talking. Torvald said he thought they should make their way to Erliton. Karsa didn't understand why. There was nothing of value in the cities as far as Karsa was concerned. Torvald said it was a port city, so there would be ships going back to Genebacus. They could work for their passage home. He was ready to get back to his family, and Torvald was sure Karsa's tribe would be happy to have him back, unless what had happened to the Sunid had happened to his own tribe. Karsa said he would one day return to his people, but not yet, as Urgal led him. Karsa could feel him. Karsa said secrets have power as long as they stay secret. Karsa had thought on Barath Guild's words. They had changed him. Karsa thought that Urgal's power over him was what he didn't know. Secrets that his own god withheld from him. Karsa had stopped fighting this war within himself. Urgal guides him, and Karsa follows, for this journey was to truth. Torvald told Karsa he may not like what he found. Karsa understood this. Torvald said that Keeper didn't think it was safe to be around Karsa. It was as if he drug 1,000 unseen chains behind him, and whatever is on the other end of them is venomous. Karsa's blood went cold. Torvald noticed the change in Karsa's demeanor and said he had only spoken passing and that he didn't mean anything by it, and that he only warned that he should be careful in Karsa's company, as if Torvald didn't already know this. Torvald suggested that Karsa not cross the man again, as he was, pound for pound, the strongest man Torvald had ever met, including Karsa. I guess that shoots my tough and strong theory in the foot right there. Even though he had regained some strength, he still had half a dozen broken ribs. Karsa said he had heard enough and he didn't plan on attacking Keeper. It was his vision that gave Karsa troubles, for he had shared it, and that is why he needs to find the truth. Torvald still thought Erliton was the best option. Karsa said Keeper was correct. He was dangerous to be around, and the danger will probably increase. He would go to Erliton with Torvald. Torvald said they should thank Keeper for his hospitality. He would hold on dearly to the truth that is their friendship, as no one was likely to believe it. Karsa asked what he meant by that. Torvald said he could make acquaintances and minions easily enough, but his big mouth sent potential friends running. Karsa understood this, and Torvald thought Karsa would want to put him on the first ship he found and send him away. Karsa was appreciative of Torvald's friendship, for when he was chained on the ship, his words were the only thing that kept him sane. Madness would have taken him for real if it were not for Torvald's conversation. Karsa said he was a Teblor war leader. He was needed, but he did not have a need himself. He had followers, not allies, and now he understood the difference. It was a huge difference, and now he understood what it meant to have regrets. When he returned home one day, these were things he would need to fix. So, when Karsa heard that Torvald wanted to go home, it made Karsa's heart happy. Keeper was waiting for them, sitting on a stool. He tossed them each a bag of money and said it was big bills, so don't flaunt it. The cut verses in Erliton were legendary. Keeper said when you planned your own death, one would need to think far in advance. An anonymous life didn't come as cheap as one might think. He had emptied half of Aaron's treasury the day before he drowned. They might manage to kill him and hope to find it, but it would be easier if they just thanked him for his generosity and got on their way. Karsa said one day he would return and repay him. Keeper asked if he meant the coin or the broken ribs. Karsa only smiled. Keeper laughed. Karsa and Torvald took their packs and headed down the road.
We did it! Yay!
There it is.
There it
That's
is.
the end of it here.
So, what as far as thoughts, what do you have? I mean, it was a wrappy up section. It just kind of concluded things.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one thought that I wrote down, and just something else I've kind of been thinking about. But again, we get this image of unseen chains and that. And again, my mind can only go to Dragnipur. Maybe it's just because that's the only thing we've seen with like chains and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I don't know if my mind immediately goes to Dragnipur. I think I'd just go back to the description of the dream that he had and what it means, trying to decipher what it means. One of the things that I really enjoyed about, I guess, the way that this chapter concluded is just the sense of camaraderie between Nam and Karsa and how similar they are as people, Nam always had acquaintances, but drove people away with his chatter, right? And Karsa didn't really have friends either. They just blindly followed him because of fear or intimidation or what have you, Neither one of them having any type of genuine relationship.
Yeah, I like it too. I think you had a comment earlier about a budding bromance, and I wonder how long it will last. Or if they're gonna. I think they must split ways before too long, because it's like again, we talked about I remembered that this Toblikai had a wooden sword. Well, now Karsa's on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's looking good. I don't know. I wonder if Nam's going to die, or maybe he just goes back home.
Maybe. I feel like their relationship is too. But I mean, again, obviously anything can happen in this world. But I feel like their relationship is too good to just sever. So, but again, that very well could be a means for like, yeah, I'm going to kill one of them, so I pull on your heartstrings.
Right.
I would imagine that of the two, it would be Nam. Compared to Karsa. But yeah, no, I think that nothing ever goes the way that is planned. So while they plan to go to Erliton, I would imagine that, if I'm going to guess based on my experience with the series, is that they either get there and things don't go the way that they should. Like maybe when they get there, the rebellion has started and they end up scattering and can't get onto the port. So they, being that they are Malazan, or that Nam is Malazan. Well, no, he's Daru. So maybe he gets mistaken as a Malazan and like they end up fleeing into the desert, kind of similar to Coltane's March, and end up on Shaik's camp or some shit, like, yeah.
I mean, the timing is probably about there for it. So I think that seems like a pretty good guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that if I go back to Deadhouse Gates, Culp and Duiker had separated right as the rebellion started. he went to go warn Coltane about the rebellion, and Culp went to go retrieve Haboric. Yeah, I would say that the rebellion had just started, so Erlatin is probably either starting to rebel or is kind of in a little bit of the aftermath of those first few days.
I wonder what Karsa's journey for truth, what is the truth he's looking for? I wonder what he's thinking he's going to find and how it'll be different from what he does find.
Maybe. I feel like part of me like 100% agrees with like your Toblakai observation. And I feel like they're going to end up in Shaik's camp, and the Toblakai, I forget his name, but the Toblakai is going to impart some truth that Karsa's probably not going to want to hear.
I don't know. Did he even have a name, or did they just call him Toblakai?
I think they just called him Toblakai. But maybe,
I think so too.
Maybe I could be wrong. But maybe that was, again, maybe they didn't reveal his name for a purpose. And that purpose isn't going to happen until we read on.
Right.
So
I like how this isn't the last chapter of the subbook. We're going into that now, or will be. But it feels like this is the end of the subbook.
Yeah. I would say more so than you usually get before, right?
Yeah. So I wonder what kind of... It feels like sometimes you kind of get a little bit of a cliffhanger. So I wonder what we'll get left off with. Because I wonder like the first, chapter 5, I wonder if we'll finally see another point of view besides Karsa's, or if we'll get one more from him and then go into some other stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, hard to say. I guess I'm cool with either or. I guess depending upon how this next chapter ends off, I would imagine that I'll be in a spot where I'm okay to moving on. So yeah, I feel like there's so many possibilities. But yeah, I'm loving this book so far.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people have their issues with it, and maybe I can see why, but I like it. I think it's tying in so nicely while telling us another story.
Yeah, I guess right now I don't know what. Like you said, we're roughly a quarter of the way through the book. Maybe, we'll see things that might be a little more problematic as we go here. But right now, I like this book quite a bit too. I don't know how I would rank it yet, but we gotta finish it, and then I'll decide.
Yeah. I feel like at this point, I can't remember who said it, but it's just one continuous story. I think it was Billy from episode 1 was saying that he just sees it as just one giant book. Kind of how I'm starting to feel about it too. So yeah.
Well, anything else you got to say on the chapter here?
No, not at all.
I was thinking about this and forgot to do it at the beginning, but we've been gaining some new YouTube subscribers and stuff, which is cool to see. So if you haven't yet, we'd love it if you would hit the subscribe button there and help us gain some more numbers. Another thing, we've got, I don't know how many episodes we have out now, 100 and some, over 100.
120-ish maybe.
Gee, I didn't think it was that high. If you listen on Spotify, I would love to see like a comment on there. It doesn't even have to be on this episode, wherever, if you hear one, if you do it on an episode after this, but just another way, throw a comment, whatever it is, thoughts, and I'll respond to it. I know you typically do the YouTube stuff there, but I think that would just be cool to see something there. I don't know how common that is for people, even on like other podcasts, but something that's there, throw us a comment.
Yeah, leave us a review. We're open to feedback. I feel like it's been a minute since we've had some good constructive criticism, so we're open for it.
Otherwise, I don't think I've got anything else tonight. Do you?
Not at all. I feel satisfied.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you, man. I don't know if I'm probably not going to read the chapter tonight. I'm not sure if you're planning on it or not.
I definitely am. I'm probably going to at least delve a little bit. So, yeah.
Shoot me a text what you think then. Yeah, I probably won't get to it tonight.
Yeah, will do, dude.
All right, man. Well, it was great chatting. Hope you have a good night, and we'll talk Saturday.
Yeah, see you soon.
We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye, man.
Bye. DMJs and Big Quiz.
CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest.